The billion-dollar CEO stood frozen in the rain-soaked parking lot, watching a single father kneel in the mud to tie his daughter's shoelace, and realized her entire empire meant absolutely nothing. Victoria Sinclair had crushed competitors, dominated boardrooms, and built in fortune before 30. But tonight, staring at Nathan Reed's worn jacket and his child's bright laughter echoing through the October storm, she understood something terrifying. She had won everything except a life worth living. This is the story of how the loneliest woman in Chicago learned what truly mattered, from a man who refused to compromise for anyone. If you want to see where this journey leads, stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The Meridian Group's annual charity gala wasn't just another corporate event. It was a battlefield dressed in champagne and silk. Victoria Sinclair knew this better than anyone. At 30 years old, she'd built her reputation by being the youngest and most ruthless CEO the company had ever seen. While other executives still kissed rings and played politics, Victoria had already restructured 3 failing divisions, fired 2 VPs who thought their tenure made them untouchable, and increased shareholder value by 42% in 18 months. People didn't admire her, they feared her. And tonight, standing in the grand ballroom of Chicago's Blackstone Hotel, surrounded by crystal chandeliers and the city's wealthiest power players, Victoria felt exactly as empty as she always did. Victoria, darling, Margaret Chen, one of the senior board members, swept toward her with a champagne flute and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You look absolutely radiant. That dress must have cost more than most people make in a year. Victoria glanced down at the midnight blue Valentino gown that her assistant had picked out. She honestly couldn't remember putting it on. Margaret, good to see you. I was just telling Richard that you really should consider slowing down a bit. All work and no play makes for a very lonely life. Margaret's laugh was sharp and practiced. Though I suppose when you're worth what you're worth, who needs companionship? The comment stung more than Victoria would ever admit. She smiled coolly. I'll keep that in mind. As Margaret drifted away, Victoria caught her reflection in one of the ballroom's ornate mirrors. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect everything. She looked like someone had designed her in a laboratory specifically to intimidate people at corporate functions. She hated it. Ms. Sinclair. Her assistant, James, appeared at her elbow, looking nervous as usual. The mayor wants a photo with you for the Tribune, and Mr. Hashimoto from the Tokyo office is asking when you'll be available to discuss the merger. Tell the mayor 5 minutes. Tell Hashimoto tomorrow morning at 6. 6 a.m. Do I stutter, James? No, ma'am. Right away. Victoria took a long sip of her wine, a 2015 Chateau Margaux that probably cost $800 a bottle, and tasted absolutely nothing. Everything in her life was expensive and impressive and completely meaningless. She was scanning the room, mentally cataloging which executive she needed to corner before the night ended, when she saw him. He was standing near the floor-to-ceiling windows, partially hidden behind a marble column, holding what looked like a glass of water instead of alcohol. Mid-30s, probably. Dark hair that needed a trim. An off-the-rack suit that fit okay, but clearly wasn't custom-made. He wasn't networking, wasn't laughing too loud at unfunny jokes, wasn't doing any of the performative nonsense that everyone else was doing. He was just watching the storm outside. Victoria felt something unfamiliar stir in her chest. Curiosity, maybe. Or just the desperate boredom of someone who'd memorized every face in every room. She walked over without really deciding to. Not a fan of small talk? She asked. He turned, and Victoria got her first good look at him. Tired eyes. The kind of tired that came from years, not just one bad week. But when he smiled slightly, it was genuine. I'm terrible at it, actually, he said. I usually just nod and hope people think I'm mysterious instead of awkward. Victoria laughed. Actually laughed. When was the last time that happened? I'm Victoria. I know who you are. He said it without any particular emphasis. No awe, no nervousness, no agenda, just a statement of fact. And you are? Nathan Reed, senior analyst, second floor, east or east wing. He paused. We've actually been in the same elevator 3 times. Victoria blinked. Have we? You were on your phone all 3 times. I don't take it personally. There was no bitterness in his voice, no judgment, just observation. Victoria felt something twist uncomfortably in her stomach. She was always on her phone. She couldn't remember the last time she'd actually looked at another person in an elevator. "So what brings a senior analyst to the gala?" she asked, changing the subject. "These things are usually just for executives and board members. My manager thought it would be good for my career development." Nathan made air quotes with one hand. "I think she was hoping I'd network my way into a promotion. And instead you're hiding behind a column." "Strategic positioning," Nathan corrected. "I can see the exits from here." Victoria found herself smiling again. "You really don't want to be here." "Do you?" The question caught her off guard. No one ever asked her that. No one ever assumed that Victoria Sinclair, master of the corporate universe, might not want to be exactly where she was. "That's complicated," she said finally. "Most honest things are." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the storm intensify outside. Rain battered the windows. Lightning flickered across the Chicago skyline. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said, not looking at him. "And I need you to be honest." "Okay." "Does my age bother people?" The words came out before she could stop them. "I'm 30. Half the board is over 60. Most of the executives have kids older than me. Sometimes I wonder if they'd respect me more if I had gray hair and a couple of failed marriages under my belt." Nathan considered this seriously. "I think people are bothered by competence. Age is just the excuse they use because admitting you're better than them hurts their ego." "That's not an answer." "No," Nathan said. "Your age doesn't bother people. Your competence does. But you already knew that." Victoria turned to look at him fully. "You're not trying to impress me. Would it work if I tried?" "Probably not." "Then I'll save us both the effort." Nathan glanced at his watch. Not a Rolex or an Omega, just a regular Timex with a leather band that had seen better days, and his expression shifted. "I'm sorry. I need to go. The gala just started." "I know, but I have somewhere I need to be." Victoria felt something close to panic. She didn't want him to leave. She couldn't remember the last time she'd had a conversation that didn't feel like a chess match. "Where could you possibly need to be at 8:30 on a Friday night?" Nathan smiled, but this time it was different, softer. "My daughter's waiting for me." And just like that, he walked away. Victoria stood there, champagne in hand, surrounded by Chicago's elite, and watched Nathan Reed disappear through the ballroom doors without looking back. For the first time in her life, the most powerful woman in the room had been left standing alone. The weekend passed slowly. Victoria spent Saturday morning at the office, old habits, reviewing quarterly reports that could have waited until Monday. She had lunch with her father, a stilted 90-minute affair, where they discussed stock prices and carefully avoided anything personal. Saturday evening was a charity dinner she'd committed to months ago, full of people who wanted her money or her influence, or both. Sunday she woke up in her penthouse apartment on Lakeshore Drive, surrounded by expensive furniture she'd never picked out, and realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd actually enjoyed a weekend. By Monday morning, she was back in her element. Charcoal suit, 4-inch heels, briefcase full of strategy documents. She had back-to-back meetings until noon, an investor call at 1, and a budget review at 3. But during a brief break around 10:30, she found herself opening her laptop and pulling up the company directory. Nathan Reed, Senior Analyst, Financial Strategy Division, hired 6 years ago. Bachelor's degree from Northwestern, MBA from University of Chicago. Performance reviews consistently excellent. And then, buried in his file, something unusual. Employee has declined promotion opportunities on 3 separate occasions. Reason cited, scheduling conflicts. Victoria frowned. Who turned down promotions? In her world, people clawed their way up the ladder, backstabbing anyone in their path. The idea of someone actively refusing advancement was almost incomprehensible. She dug deeper. Nathan's schedule showed him arriving every morning at 7:30, standard. But he left every single day at exactly 4:45, not 4:30, not 5. 4:45 without deviation for the past 6 years. "Ms. Sinclair?" James knocked on her office door. "Your 10:45 is here." Victoria closed the laptop quickly, feeling oddly guilty. "Send them in." But she couldn't stop thinking about it. Over the next week, Victoria found herself noticing things she'd never paid attention to before. She saw Nathan in the cafeteria on Tuesday, eating lunch alone while reading something on his phone. She passed him in the hallway on Wednesday, and he nodded politely without breaking stride. She spotted him in a conference room on Thursday, explaining something on a whiteboard to two junior analysts who were hanging on his every word. He was good at his job. That much was obvious. People respected him, but he never showboated, never drew attention to himself, never played the corporate game, and every day at 4:45 he left. It was driving her crazy. "James," she said on Friday afternoon, making a decision she'd probably regret. "Clear my schedule after 4:30. "Clear it? You have the Singapore team at 5 and the budget review at 6:30. "Reschedule them." James looked like she'd just asked him to reschedule Christmas. "Both of them? Do I need to repeat myself?" "No, ma'am. I'll make it happen." At 4:30, Victoria found herself doing something she hadn't done in years, leaving the office early. She told herself she was just taking a walk, getting some air. Definitely not following one of her employees to see where he went every afternoon. Except that's exactly what she was doing. She watched from across the street as Nathan exited the building at 4:47, right on schedule. He walked 3 blocks to the Red Line station, took the train north for 15 minutes, and got off in a residential neighborhood Victoria had never visited. The rain had started again, that persistent October drizzle that made everything gray and cold. Nathan walked another 4 blocks, and Victoria followed at a distance, feeling increasingly ridiculous. What was she doing? She was a CEO stalking one of her analysts through the streets of Chicago in the rain. If anyone saw her, if anyone recognized her. Nathan stopped in front of an elementary school, Fairfield Elementary. The sign was weathered. The building looked like it needed a renovation about a decade ago. A few other parents stood waiting near the entrance, chatting among themselves. Nathan checked his watch. Exactly 5:15. And then the doors burst open. Children poured out like a flood, backpacks bouncing, jackets unzipped, voices overlapping in that particular chaos that only elementary schools could produce. Victoria watched from beneath the awning of a corner bodega as a little girl spotted Nathan and screamed, "Daddy!" She was maybe 7 or 8 years old. Dark curly hair pulled into uneven pigtails, pink raincoat 2 sizes too big. She ran straight at Nathan like a missile, and he dropped to one knee in the wet parking lot to catch her. "Hey, Sophie Bug," he said, and Victoria could hear the smile in his voice even from 30 feet away. "Daddy, guess what? Guess what happened today?" "What happened?" "Mrs. Palmer said my drawing was the best one in the whole class, and she put it on the wall next to the door where everybody can see it." "That's amazing. What did you draw?" "A dragon. A purple one with 3 heads. And it's breathing fire, but also ice because I decided it's a magic dragon that can do both." Nathan laughed, and it was completely different from his polite smile at the gala. This was real, unguarded. A dragon that breathes fire and ice. That's very practical. "I know, right?" Sophie was bouncing on her toes now, energized by his attention. "And then during music class, we learned a new song about an octopus, and I remembered all the words even though Jamie forgot his part and Mrs. Chen had to help him, and Daddy, you're getting wet." "I'm fine." "You're kneeling in a puddle." "It's a small puddle." "It's a big puddle. You're going to get sick." Nathan stood up, brushing off his knees. "Then we better get home before I catch a cold." "What do you want for dinner?" "Spaghetti." "We had spaghetti yesterday." "Spaghetti's the best." "How about chicken?" Sophie made a face. "The kind with the vegetables?" "The kind with some vegetables, yes." "Can we have spaghetti with vegetables?" Nathan sighed, but he was smiling. "You drive a hard bargain, Sophie Bug." They started walking, Sophie chattering nonstop about her day, and Nathan listening like every word was the most important thing he'd ever heard. Victoria stood frozen under the bodega awning, rain dripping from the edges, watching them disappear down the street. Something inside her chest cracked open. That night, back in her penthouse, Victoria poured herself a glass of wine and stood at her floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the glittering Chicago skyline. Her apartment was beautiful, objectively, mathematically beautiful. Hardwood floors, designer furniture, art on the walls that cost more than most people's cars. The view alone was worth a fortune. But it was silent. No one was waiting for her. No one had asked about her day. No one cared whether she ate dinner or skipped it entirely. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts. Hundreds of names, executives, investors, board members, lawyers, consultants. Not a single friend. When had that happened? When had her life become nothing but work and obligations and performances? Victoria set down her wine glass and opened her laptop instead. She spent the next 3 hours digging into Nathan's background. Not because she was looking for dirt, she told herself she was just being thorough. Due diligence, that's all. Nathan Reed, born in Indianapolis, moved to Chicago for college. Married Emily Carlson in 2015. Daughter Sophie, born in 2017. Emily Reed died in 2019, ovarian cancer. She was 29 years old. Victoria stared at the obituary for a long time. Emily is survived by her husband Nathan and their daughter Sophie. In lieu of flowers, the family requests donations to the Chicago Children's Hospital Oncology Department. 2 years. Nathan had been a widower for 2 years, raising a daughter alone, and he'd never mentioned it, never used it for sympathy, never let it affect his work. And suddenly his rigid schedule made perfect sense. He wasn't leaving at 4:45 because he didn't care about his career. He was leaving because his daughter needed him, because he'd promised someone he loved that he would be there. Victoria closed her laptop and walked back to the windows. Outside, Chicago glittered like a jewelry box. Inside, her reflection stared back at her. Perfect hair, perfect skin, perfectly alone. For the first time in her life, Victoria Sinclair wondered if she'd been winning the wrong game all along. The crisis hit on a Wednesday morning. Victoria was in her office reviewing the Tokyo expansion proposal when James burst through her door without knocking, which meant something was seriously wrong. "We have a problem," he said, his face pale. "A big one." "Explain." "The Hanover account. There's a discrepancy in the quarterly reports, a big discrepancy. Someone in financial strategy apparently used the wrong algorithm for the risk assessment, and now the numbers don't match what we presented to their board last month." Victoria's blood went cold. Hanover Industries was one of their biggest clients, $42 million annually. If they lost confidence in Meridian's reporting, how bad? Bad enough that their CFO is threatening to pull the entire account unless we can explain what happened. "Get everyone from financial strategy in the conference room, now." 15 minutes later, Victoria stood at the head of the table, looking at a room full of analysts and managers who all looked like they wanted to be anywhere else. "Someone want to tell me how this happened?" Her voice was ice. Silence. "No one? Really? $42 million is about to walk out the door and nobody knows why?" Marcus Thompson, one of the senior managers, cleared his throat. "We're still investigating the source of the error, Ms. Sinclair. It appears there was a miscommunication between teams about which risk model to use for the manufacturing sector projections." "A miscommunication," Victoria repeated flatly. "Do you understand what's at stake here?" "Yes, ma'am." "Then fix it. I want a complete analysis on my desk in 2 hours explaining exactly what went wrong and exactly how we're going to prevent it from happening again. And I want someone to call Hanover's CFO and schedule a meeting for tomorrow morning so I can personally walk them through the corrections." Tomorrow morning might be difficult to arrange on such short notice. "I don't care if it's difficult. Make it happen." The meeting dissolved into chaos as people scattered to their desks, phones started ringing, and the blame game began in earnest. Victoria was about to leave when she noticed Nathan sitting quietly in the corner, his laptop open, his expression focused. "Reed, you're in financial strategy. What's your assessment?" He looked up. "It's not a miscommunication." "Excuse me?" "Everyone's saying it was a miscommunication between teams, but that's not accurate. The algorithm we used was correct for standard manufacturing risk assessment. The problem is that Hanover expanded into pharmaceutical production last quarter, which requires a completely different risk model. No one caught it because the expansion wasn't properly flagged in our client database." Victoria stared at him. "How do you know that?" "I reviewed their last 3 quarterly filings this morning when I heard about the problem. It's all there in the footnotes." "And you didn't think to mention this in the meeting?" Nathan shrugged slightly. "I'm a senior analyst. No one was asking senior analysts for input. They were asking managers." He wasn't being bitter, just factual. Victoria pulled out her phone. "James, get me everything Hanover filed in the last 6 months, and get me their pharmaceutical expansion documentation." She hung up and looked at Nathan. "If you're right about this, can you build a corrected model?" "I already started." "How long will it take?" "To do it right, maybe 4 hours. To do it fast, 2 hours, but it won't be pretty." "I need it in 90 minutes." Nathan didn't blink. Then I guess it won't be pretty. Okay. 97 minutes later, Nathan sent Victoria a file containing the most comprehensive risk analysis she'd ever seen. He hadn't just corrected the model, he'd completely reconstructed it, accounting for Hanover's pharmaceutical expansion, adjusting for sector-specific volatility, and including 3 different scenario projections with detailed explanations for each. It was perfect. Victoria took the analysis straight to the executive team, spent 45 minutes on a conference call with Hanover's CFO, and watched as their fury gradually transformed into grudging respect. "I appreciate the thorough response," the CFO said finally. "This is exactly the kind of detail we needed to see. Send over the formal documentation and we'll review it with our board." When Victoria hung up, the conference room erupted in relieved applause. "Excellent work, Miss Sinclair," Marcus Thompson said, looking like he'd just avoided a heart attack. "Your quick thinking saved the account." Victoria looked at him coolly. "It wasn't my quick thinking. It was Nathan Reed's analysis. He's the one who identified the actual problem while everyone else was pointing fingers." Marcus's smile flickered. "Well, of course, team effort. More. No, not team effort. Nathan's effort. Maybe if you'd asked your senior analysts for input instead of assuming they had nothing to contribute, we could have avoided this mess in the first place." She left the conference room before anyone could respond. An hour later, Victoria found Nathan at his desk, packing up to leave. It was 4:30. "Reed, my office, now." He followed her silently through the maze of cubicles and into her executive suite. When she closed the door, he looked mildly concerned, but not particularly worried. "Am I in trouble?" he asked. "The opposite." Victoria sat on the edge of her desk instead of behind it, more casual, less intimidating. "You saved us $42 million today. Do you understand that?" "I just did my job." "No. You did Marcus Thompson's job, and you did it better than he could have." She paused. "I'm promoting you to Director of Financial Strategy." Nathan blinked. "I don't want a promotion." "Excuse me?" "I appreciate the offer, but I'm happy where I am." Victoria felt frustration rising. "Do you understand what I'm offering? Director-level position, 20% salary increase, your own team, direct reporting to me." "I understand, and I'm saying no." "Why?" Nathan glanced at his watch. "Because directors work until 7 or 8 every night. They travel for client meetings. They take calls on weekends. I can't do that." "Can't or won't?" "Both." He met her eyes steadily. "Ms. Sinclair, I'm good at my job. I know I'm good at it, but I'm already using my life where it matters most. A promotion would take time away from my daughter, and no amount of money is worth that trade." Victoria felt something twist in her chest again, that same uncomfortable sensation from the gala. "You're wasting your talent," she said quietly. "I'm using it where it counts." Nathan moved toward the door, then paused. "You know what the difference is between you and me?" "What?" "When I leave this building every day, someone's waiting for me. Someone who doesn't care about quarterly reports or client retention or what algorithm I used. She just cares that I'm home." He smiled slightly. "You should try it sometime." And then he left, closing the door gently behind him. Victoria sat in her office for a long time after that, watching the sun set over Chicago, and realized she couldn't remember the last time anyone had been waiting for her to come home. That night, Victoria did something she hadn't done in almost 3 years. She called her sister. "Hello?" Laura sounded suspicious. "Victoria? Hi. Is everything okay? Are you in the hospital?" "No, I'm fine. I just wanted to talk." Silence on the other end, then, "Who is this really? Because my sister doesn't just want to talk." Victoria almost hung up. This was a mistake, but something made her stay on the line. "I'm trying," she said quietly. "I'm trying to be better." Another pause. "Better at what?" "At being human, I guess." Laura laughed, but it wasn't cruel. "Well, that's a start. You want to get coffee this weekend, like normal people?" "Yeah, I'd like that." "Okay, Saturday at 10, that place on Randolph you used to like before you became too important for brunch." "I was never too important to..." "Victoria, you missed my birthday 3 years in a row." The words hit like a slap. "I'm sorry." "I know. That's why I'm giving you another chance." Laura's voice softened. See you Saturday, okay? Okay. After they hung up, Victoria sat on her couch, a $8,000 Italian leather couch she'd never really looked at, and felt something unfamiliar. Hope, maybe. Or just the terrifying realization that she'd been living wrong for a very long time. The following Tuesday, Victoria did something else she'd never done. She left work at noon. "Are you feeling all right?" James asked, looking genuinely concerned. "Should I call a doctor?" "I'm fine. I'll have my phone if anything urgent comes up." "Where are you going?" Victoria grabbed her coat. "None of your business, James." She drove to Fairfield Elementary, parked a block away, and spent 15 minutes wondering what the hell she was doing. Then she walked into the school office and asked to speak with the principal. Principal Dr. Sarah Martinez looked surprised but professional. "Ms. Sinclair, I wasn't expecting you. How can I help?" "I want to volunteer," Victoria said. "Volunteer?" "Yes, for the arts program. I understand you're looking for support." Dr. Martinez's eyebrows rose. "How did you know that?" "I did some research." Victoria didn't mention she'd spent 4 hours reading through the school's public budget documents and grant applications. "Your arts funding was cut by 60% last year. You're running the program entirely on donations and volunteer time." "That's correct." "I'd like to help, both financially and personally. I can commit to Tuesday afternoons." Dr. Martinez studied her carefully. "May I ask why?" Victoria thought about Nathan kneeling in the rain to hear about purple dragons. She thought about Sophie's bright laughter and uneven pigtails. She thought about her own silent penthouse and empty weekends. "Because I want to do something that matters," she said simply. Dr. Martinez smiled. "Then welcome aboard. We meet every Tuesday at 3 in the art room." That afternoon, Victoria spent 2 hours helping second graders paint self-portraits. She got acrylic paint on her Prada blouse. A kid named Marcus spilled glitter in her hair. Another kid asked her if she was a princess because her shoes were so shiny. It was chaotic and messy and completely wonderful. At 4:30, she was cleaning paintbrushes when she heard a familiar voice in the hallway. "Sophie, slow down!" Victoria's heart jumped. She looked up just as Sophie Reed burst into the art room, stopped dead, and stared at her with wide eyes. "Hi," Victoria said, suddenly nervous. Sophie tilted her head. "You're the paint lady." "I guess I am." "Your hair has glitter." Victoria touched her hair self-consciously. "Yeah, sorry about that." Nathan appeared in the doorway looking confused. "Miss Sinclair." "Mr. Reed." They stared at each other for a long moment. Sophie looked between them. "You know each other?" "We work together," Nathan said slowly. "The paint lady works at your office?" "Apparently." Victoria cleared her throat. "I'm volunteering with the arts program now, Tuesdays." "Why?" Nathan asked, and it wasn't accusatory, just genuinely curious. "Because," Victoria looked at Sophie, who was still watching her with that intense child focus. "Because someone told me I should try doing something that matters." Nathan's expression softened slightly. "Understanding." Sophie tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy, can the paint lady come to my concert?" "What concert?" "The winter concert. It's in December. We're singing songs and everything. Mrs. Palmer said we can invite people." Nathan smiled. "I think Miss Sinclair is probably very busy." "I'd love to come," Victoria interrupted. Both Reeds stared at her. "Really?" Sophie's face lit up. "You promise?" "I promise." Sophie beamed and immediately started chattering about what songs they were learning and how she got picked to stand in the front row because she was one of the best singers, even though Jamie was louder, but being loud wasn't the same as being good. Nathan watched his daughter with fond exasperation, then looked at Victoria. His expression was complicated. Wary, maybe, but also something else. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for volunteering. The arts program means a lot to these kids." "It means a lot to me too," Victoria said, and realized she meant it. After they left, Victoria sat alone in the art room, surrounded by drying paintings and scattered glitter, and felt something she hadn't felt in years, like maybe she was finally becoming someone worth knowing. The rumor started exactly 3 weeks after Victoria began volunteering at Fairfield Elementary. She first heard about them from her father, of all people. Theodore Sinclair had built his own fortune in real estate before retiring at 65. and he still kept his finger on the pulse of Chicago's business community through a network of golf buddies and country club gossip. "Victoria," he said over their monthly lunch at Gibson's Steakhouse, cutting into his ribeye with surgical precision. "I'm hearing some concerning things." Victoria looked up from her salmon. "What kind of things?" "About you and one of your employees." He said it delicately, the way people discussed embarrassing medical conditions. "A man in financial strategy." Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "Who told you that? Does it matter?" "Multiple people have mentioned it. You're apparently spending time with him outside of work, visiting his child's school. People are talking. People are always talking. Not about you. Not like this." Theodore set down his knife. "I didn't raise you to be careless with your reputation. The board is already looking for reasons to question your judgment. You're young, you're female, and you've made enemies by being better than men twice your age. Don't give them ammunition." Victoria felt anger rising in her chest, hot and sharp. "I'm volunteering at an elementary school. That's hardly scandalous. It is when the timing coincides with you taking a sudden interest in a male employee who happens to have a child at that same school." Her father's voice was calm but firm. "I'm not saying there's any truth to it. I'm saying appearances matter. And right now the appearance is that the CEO is showing favoritism toward a subordinate. Nathan Reed earned my respect by saving a $42 million account. He's brilliant at his job. Then promote him and move on. Don't blur the lines between professional and personal." He turned down a promotion. Theodore blinked. "He what?" "He turned it down. Said he didn't want to work longer hours." Her father sat back in his chair, genuinely surprised. "That's unusual." "That's Nathan." The name came out too easily, too familiar. Victoria saw her father notice. "Be careful," Theodore said quietly. "I know you think you're invincible, but you're not. One mistake can destroy everything you've built." Victoria pushed her salmon around her plate, appetite gone. "What if I don't care?" "Excuse me?" "What if I don't care about appearances or reputations or what the board thinks?" The words surprised her as much as they surprised him. "What if I'm tired of building an empire that doesn't make me happy?" Theodore studied her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Then you're having a midlife crisis at 30, and that's even more concerning." They finished lunch in uncomfortable silence. That afternoon, Victoria returned to the office to find James waiting outside her door, looking nervous. "We have a situation," he said. "Of course we do. Margaret Chen requested a meeting with you. She was very insistent about it being today." Victoria's jaw tightened. Margaret was one of the most senior board members and also one of the most political. She never requested meetings without an agenda. "Fine. When?" "She's already here, conference room B." Of course she was. Victoria found Margaret sitting at the head of the conference table like she owned it, perfectly coiffed silver hair and a smile that could cut glass. "Victoria, thank you for seeing me on such short notice." "Margaret." Victoria sat down across from her, refusing to be intimidated in her own building. "What can I do for you?" "I wanted to discuss some concerns that have been brought to my attention regarding your relationship with one of our analysts." There it was. "Nathan Reed is an exceptional employee," Victoria said evenly. "If someone has a problem with me recognizing talent, they're welcome to bring it up directly." "It's not about recognizing talent." Margaret's smile never wavered. "It's about perception. Several executives have noticed that you've taken a personal interest in Mr. Reed, that you've been seen at his daughter's school, that you defended him quite forcefully in front of his manager." "I defended him because he was right and Marcus Thompson was wrong." "Perhaps, but it creates an awkward dynamic when the CEO appears to be playing favorites." Victoria leaned forward. "Let me be very clear about something, Margaret. I don't play favorites. I reward competence. Nathan Reed has consistently demonstrated exceptional analytical skills and strategic thinking. If other employees want the same recognition, they can demonstrate the same level of excellence. No one is questioning his competence. Then what are they questioning?" Margaret's smile finally faded. "Your judgment. You're 30 years old, unmarried, famously married to your career. And now suddenly you're spending time with a widower who happens to be attractive and vulnerable. It looks like you're having some kind of personal crisis." The words hit harder than Victoria expected. Not because they were cruel, but because they were partially true. I'm volunteering at an underfunded elementary school, Victoria said, keeping her voice level. That's hardly scandalous behavior. It is when it coincides with obvious favoritism toward an employee whose child attends that school. Then maybe the board should spend less time gossiping and more time focusing on the fact that our quarterly numbers are up 17%. Victoria, is there anything else? Victoria stood up. Because I have actual work to do. Margaret stood as well, her expression hardening. Be careful. You've made a lot of enemies by being smarter than people who've been in this business for decades. They're looking for an excuse to tear you down. Don't hand them one. After Margaret left, Victoria sat alone in the conference room, hands shaking slightly with suppressed fury. She pulled out her phone and typed out a text to Nathan. We need to talk. Then she deleted it. This wasn't his problem. This was hers. But the damage was already done. Over the next week, Victoria noticed the shift. Executives who used to greet her warmly now offered tight smiles. People stopped talking when she entered rooms. During a budget meeting, Richard Holloway made a pointed comment about maintaining professional boundaries that earned a few knowing looks around the table. She was being undermined, slowly, carefully, but definitely. And the worst part was that she wasn't even doing what they were accusing her of. She wasn't having an affair with Nathan. She barely knew him beyond their brief conversations and the few times she'd seen him at the school, but she wanted to know him. That was the terrifying truth underneath all of it. On Tuesday afternoon, Victoria almost skipped volunteering. It would be easier to just stop going, to eliminate the ammunition people were using against her. But then she thought about Sophie's excited face when she talked about the winter concert. She thought about the second graders who'd started waiting for her each week, showing her their drawings and asking if she liked their color choices. She thought about the person she was becoming when she was there, someone real, someone useful, someone who existed outside of spreadsheets and shareholder value. So she went. The art room was chaotic as usual. Mrs. Palmer, the art teacher, had organized a papier-mâché project that involved far too much glue and not nearly enough supervision. Kids were covered in paste and newspaper strips, laughing and arguing and creating wonderfully terrible sculptures. Victoria spent an hour helping a girl named Emma build a cat that looked more like a deformed potato, and she loved every minute of it. She was cleaning up when Nathan appeared in the doorway early, before the usual pickup time. He looked uncomfortable. Ms. Sinclair, can we talk? Her stomach dropped. Of course. They stepped into the hallway, away from the children. Nathan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd started to recognize as his tell when he was stressed. I heard some things at work today, he said quietly. About us. There is no us. I know that. You know that. But apparently other people have different ideas. He met her eyes. I'm concerned this is affecting your position. It's fine. Victoria, he caught himself. Ms. Sinclair, I know what corporate politics look like. If people are using me to undermine you, I need to do something about it. Like what? I could transfer to a different division, request a different manager, make it clear that there's no inappropriate relationship. There's nothing inappropriate about what we're doing. I agree, but that doesn't matter if people think there is. Nathan glanced back toward the art room where Sophie was probably still covered in newspaper paste. I won't let you damage your career because you were kind to my daughter. Something in Victoria's chest twisted. Is that what you think this is? Kindness to your daughter? Isn't it? She wanted to tell him that it was more complicated than that. That she was volunteering because it made her feel human again. That she looked forward to Tuesdays more than she looked forward to closing multi-million-dollar deals. That watching him with Sophie had made her question everything she thought she wanted from life. But those words felt too vulnerable, too revealing. I make my own decisions about my career, she said instead, and I decide what's worth protecting. If the board has a problem with me volunteering at an elementary school, they can address it directly. They won't address it directly. They'll use it as evidence that you're losing focus, that you're not committed to the company. Then maybe I'm not as committed as I used to be. The admission hung in the air between them. Nathan studied her carefully. What changed? I don't know. Everything. Nothing. Victoria leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. I used to think success meant being the youngest CEO, making the most money, winning every negotiation. And then I watched you kneel in the rain to listen to your daughter talk about purple dragons, and I realized I don't have a single person in my life who cares if I come home. Victoria, don't transfer, she interrupted. Don't request a new manager. Don't change anything. If people want to make this into something, it's not. That's their problem. I'm not going to stop volunteering, and I'm not going to stop recognizing good work when I see it. Nathan looked like he wanted to argue, but Sophie chose that moment to burst into the hallway, covered head to toe in dried paste. Daddy, look! I made a turtle! Well, Mrs. Palmer says it's supposed to dry for a week, but I think it looks like a turtle already, don't you? Nathan's entire demeanor shifted, tension melting into warmth. It definitely looks like a turtle. A ninja turtle? Maybe a regular turtle that's thinking about becoming a ninja. Sophie giggled and then noticed Victoria. Paint lady, did you see my turtle? I did. It's very impressive. Are you still coming to my concert? Victoria felt Nathan's eyes on her. Yes, I promised, didn't I? Promises are important, Sophie said seriously. My daddy says you should never break promises. Your daddy's right. They walked out together, Sophie between them chattering about her turtle's potential ninja future. In the parking lot, parents were loading kids into cars, and Victoria noticed a few of them watching curiously. Let them watch, she thought. Let them all watch. Ms. Sinclair, Nathan said when they reached his car. Thank you. For what? For not making this complicated. Victoria smiled slightly. Oh, it's definitely complicated, but that's not your fault. After they drove away, Victoria sat in her car for a long time, watching the elementary school empty out. She thought about Margaret's warning, about her father's concern, about the whispers in the hallways at Meridian. Then she thought about Sophie's laughter, and Nathan's quiet integrity, and the way she felt when she was covered in paint and glitter instead of sitting in boardrooms. She pulled out her phone and called her sister. Laura, are you free for dinner tonight? Dinner twice in 1 month? Who are you and what have you done with my sister? I'm trying to be better, remember? Laura's voice softened. Yeah, I remember. What time? 7? That Italian place you like? Perfect. Victoria? Yeah? I'm proud of you. The words hit unexpectedly hard. When was the last time someone had said that to her about something other than a profit margin? Thanks, Victoria managed. See you at 7. That night, over pasta and too much wine, Victoria told her sister everything about Nathan, about Sophie, about the volunteering and the rumors and the way her entire life suddenly felt too small and too empty. Laura listened without interrupting, and when Victoria finally ran out of words, her sister reached across the table and squeezed her hand. You're in love with him, Laura said simply. I barely know him. That's not what I asked. Victoria pulled her hand back, defensive. It's not that simple. It never is. But you're different when you talk about him, about them. You light up in a way I haven't seen since before Mom died. Their mother. Victoria had been 22 when Sarah Sinclair had a stroke at her book club meeting and died before the ambulance arrived. That was when Victoria had thrown herself into work, using career success to avoid grief. 8 years. She'd been running for 8 years. I don't know what I'm doing, Victoria admitted quietly. I've spent my entire adult life building this career, and now suddenly it doesn't feel like enough. But I can't just throw it away because I have feelings for someone. Why not? Because it's irresponsible. Because I worked too hard to get where I am. Because you're scared, Laura interrupted gently. You've always been scared of needing people, ever since Mom. You decided it was safer to be powerful than vulnerable. And that's worked pretty well for me. Has it? Because from where I'm sitting, you look miserable. Victoria wanted to argue, but she couldn't, because Laura was right. So what do I do? Victoria asked. You be honest, with him, with yourself, with the board if necessary. You stop hiding behind professionalism and productivity. You let yourself want something just because it makes you happy, not because it makes strategic sense. That's terrifying. Yeah, Laura said, smiling. Love usually is. Victoria went home that night and stood in her empty penthouse, looking out at the glittering Chicago skyline, and let herself admit the truth. She was falling for Nathan Reed, not because he was handsome or successful or ambitious, but because he was kind, because he loved his daughter fiercely, because he'd walked away from her at a gala to keep a promise to a 7-year-old, because he'd shown her that there was more to life than winning. The next morning, Victoria arrived at the office with a decision made. She called an emergency board meeting. 12 executives filed into the conference room, looking concerned and curious. Margaret Chen sat at the far end, expression carefully neutral. Victoria stood at the head of the table and looked at each of them in turn. "I've heard the rumors," she said without preamble, "about my relationship with Nathan Reed, so I'm going to address them directly. There is no inappropriate relationship. Nathan is an exceptional analyst who saved us $42 million through his quick thinking and strategic insight. I recognize that publicly because it deserved recognition. I also volunteer at Fairfield Elementary because their arts program needed support, and I had resources to offer. The fact that Nathan's daughter attends that school is coincidental, not causal." "Victoria," Margaret began. "I'm not finished." Victoria's voice was steel. "If anyone in this room has a problem with me recognizing talent or supporting education, that's your issue to resolve. But I will not tolerate whisper campaigns or attempts to undermine my authority based on speculation and gossip. This company is performing better than it has in a decade. Our numbers speak for themselves. If you want to question my leadership, do it based on actual metrics, not invented scandals." Silence around the table. Richard Holloway cleared his throat. "No one is questioning your leadership, Victoria. We're simply concerned about appearances." "Appearances?" Victoria let the word hang. "I've spent my entire career managing appearances, looking the part, saying the right things, never showing weakness. And you know what? I'm done. I'm done pretending that dedication means sacrificing everything personal. I'm done acting like working 80-hour weeks makes me a better CEO. I'm a better CEO now than I was 6 months ago, and it's because I finally have perspective outside these walls." "That's a dangerous precedent," Margaret said coolly. "If executives start prioritizing personal fulfillment over corporate responsibility, then maybe we'd have healthier, more creative, more effective leaders," Victoria interrupted. "Maybe we'd make better decisions instead of just more decisions. Maybe we'd build companies that people actually want to work for instead of companies that burn people out." She let that sink in. "I'm not going to stop volunteering," she continued. "I'm not going to stop recognizing exceptional work. And I'm not going to apologize for finally having a life outside this office. If that's unacceptable to this board, then perhaps we need to discuss whether I'm the right person for this position." It was a gamble. A huge one. Theodore Sinclair leaned forward. "Victoria, I mean it, Dad. Either you trust my judgment or you don't. But I won't be managed like a puppet." Her father's expression was unreadable. Then, slowly, he smiled. "I trust your judgment," he said. "Your mother would be proud of you." The words hit like a physical blow. Victoria's eyes stung. "Thank you," she managed. Around the table, she watched the other board members exchange glances. Margaret looked furious, but she was smart enough not to push further. Richard nodded slowly. The others followed suit. "Then we're done here," Victoria said. "Unless anyone has actual business to discuss." No one did. After they filed out, Theodore stayed behind. "That was either very brave or very stupid," he said. "Probably both. Your mother really would be proud. She always said you were too smart to waste your life in boardrooms." He stood and adjusted his tie. "For what it's worth, I like that you're volunteering. It's good for you." "Thanks, Dad. Just be careful with your heart. I know I push you to be strong, but strength includes knowing when to be vulnerable." He paused at the door. "And Victoria? That young man who turned down a promotion to be home for his daughter. He sounds like someone worth knowing." After he left, Victoria sat alone in the conference room, adrenaline slowly fading. She'd just threatened to quit rather than give up volunteering at an elementary school. 6 months ago, that would have been unthinkable. Now it felt like the sanest thing she'd ever done. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. "Heard you had an interesting board meeting. You okay?" Victoria stared at the message. How did he even know about the meeting? She typed back, "How did you hear about that?" "Executive assistants talk to senior analysts. Word travels fast. I'm fine. Better than fine." "Good. Sophie wants to know if you're still coming to her concert next week." Victoria smiled. "Wouldn't miss it. She's very excited. Fair warning, her class is singing 6 songs, and they're all slightly off-key. Sounds perfect." There was a pause, and then, "Thank you." For what you said in the meeting. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Why? Victoria's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She could say something professional, something safe. But she was done being safe, because some things are worth fighting for. Another pause. Then, yeah, they are. That night, Victoria went home to her silent penthouse and realized it didn't feel quite so empty anymore. She had dinner with Laura on Thursday. She called her college roommate on Friday, someone she hadn't spoken to in 3 years. On Saturday, she went to a farmer's market instead of the office. Small changes. But they felt revolutionary. On Tuesday afternoon, she showed up at Fairfield Elementary with a donation check for $15,000 to the arts program. Mrs. Palmer actually cried. Miss Sinclair, this is incredible. Do you know what we can do with this? I'm hoping you can expand the program, maybe hire an assistant, get better supplies. We can do all of that and more. Mrs. Palmer hugged her, surprising them both. You're changing these kids' lives. Victoria thought about her own life, about the changes happening inside her that no one could see. They're changing mine too, she said quietly. That afternoon, Sophie ran into the art room and grabbed Victoria's hand. Paint lady? Guess what? What? My daddy says you're coming to my concert for real. He bought you a ticket and everything. Victoria felt her heart skip. He did? Yeah, you're going to sit with us. Well, not during the singing part because I have to be on stage, but before and after. Nathan appeared in the doorway, looking slightly embarrassed. Sophie, I told you that was supposed to be a surprise. Oops. Sophie giggled and ran off to show her friend her latest painting. Nathan walked over, hands in his pockets. I hope that's okay. Sophie insisted we get you a seat in our row. It's more than okay. They stood there for a moment, and Victoria felt the weight of everything unsaid between them. The rumors, the board meeting, the way her entire world had shifted since that night at the gala. Nathan, Victoria. They spoke at the same time, then laughed awkwardly. You first, Nathan said. Victoria took a breath. I told the board today that I won't stop volunteering here, that I won't apologize for having a life outside work. And I meant it. I heard. That was brave. It was necessary. She met his eyes. I'm tired of being afraid. Afraid of what? Of wanting things that don't fit the plan. Of letting people see that I'm not just a CEO. She paused. Of admitting that knowing you and Sophie has been the best thing that's happened to me in years. Nathan's expression softened. Victoria, I'm not asking for anything, she said quickly. I just needed you to know that this matters, that you matter. Before Nathan could respond, Sophie bounded back over. Daddy, can the paint lady come have hot chocolate with us after the concert? Nathan looked at Victoria, a question in his eyes. I'd love that, Victoria said. And watching Sophie's face light up, watching Nathan smile that genuine smile that transformed his tired features, Victoria felt something settle into place inside her. This was what it felt like to finally come home. The week before Sophie's winter concert, Chicago got hit with the first real snow of the season. Not the pretty dusting that made everything look like a postcard, but the heavy wet kind that turned streets into slush and made commutes miserable. Victoria stood at her office window on Wednesday morning, watching the snow fall, and realized she was nervous. Actually nervous. She'd negotiated multi-million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, but the thought of sitting in an elementary school gymnasium watching second graders sing holiday songs made her palms sweaty. You're overthinking it, Laura said over the phone that night. It's a kid's concert. You show up, you clap, you tell Sophie she did great. Easy. What if Nathan regrets inviting me? Did he act like he regretted it? Victoria thought about the way Nathan had looked at her in the art room, the softness in his expression when she'd told him he mattered. No. Then stop catastrophizing. You're going to a concert with a friend and his daughter. It's not a marriage proposal. But it felt significant, more significant than it probably should. On Thursday afternoon, Victoria left work at 3:30 without explanation. James looked like he might pass out from shock, but he didn't question it anymore. She'd been leaving early every Tuesday for weeks now, and the sky hadn't fallen. She drove to Water Tower Place and spent 2 hours shopping, which was something she normally hated. But she wanted to bring Sophie a gift for the concert, and she had no idea what 7-year-old girls liked. Can I help you find something? A saleswoman at the toy store gave her a friendly smile. I need a gift for a second grader, a girl. She likes art and dragons and singing. The woman's eyes lit up. I have the perfect thing. 20 minutes later, Victoria walked out with a deluxe art set that included watercolors, colored pencils, sketch pads, and a carrying case decorated with dragons. It was probably too much. Definitely too much. But Sophie's face when she talked about her purple dragon painting had been so bright, so alive. Victoria wanted to see that expression again. On Friday, Nathan stopped by her office during his lunch break. It was the first time he'd ever come to the executive floor voluntarily, and Victoria felt her pulse quicken when James announced him. "Come in," she called, closing her laptop. Nathan entered looking uncomfortable in the expensive surroundings. Her office was deliberately intimidating. Floor-to-ceiling windows, modern art that cost more than his car, furniture designed more for power than comfort. "This is different from the second floor," he said, glancing around. "I don't spend much time here anymore." Victoria gestured to the visitor chair. "What's up?" Nathan sat on the edge of the seat like he might need to bolt at any moment. "I wanted to give you this before the concert." He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. "It's the ticket and the details. Concert starts at 7, but we should probably get there by 6:30 if we want decent seats." Victoria took the envelope. Their fingers brushed, and she felt that now familiar jolt of awareness. "Thank you." Sophie's been practicing her songs non-stop. Fair warning, you're going to have Jingle Bell Rock stuck in your head for approximately 3 weeks. "I'm prepared for that risk." Nathan smiled, but it faded quickly. "Victoria, I need to ask you something." Her stomach tightened. "Okay, why are you doing this?" He gestured vaguely, encompassing everything. "The volunteering, the donation, coming to the concert. I keep trying to figure out what you're getting out of it." It was a fair question. A month ago, Victoria would have had a polished answer ready, something about corporate social responsibility or community engagement. But she'd promised herself she was done hiding behind professional language. "I'm getting my life back," she said simply. "For years I thought success meant sacrificing everything personal. No hobbies, no relationships, no time for anything that didn't directly contribute to my career. And then I watched you with Sophie, and I realized I'd built this incredible empire, but I was completely alone in it." Nathan's expression was hard to read. "So this is about loneliness?" "No. It's about realizing what actually matters." Victoria stood and walked to the window, needing distance. "I used to measure my worth by my net worth, by how many people feared me in meetings, by how fast I climbed the ladder. But none of that means anything when you go home to an empty apartment every night." "Victoria." Maki." "I'm not trying to use you or Sophie to fill some void," she interrupted, turning back to face him. "That's not what this is. But being around you both, volunteering at the school, actually having something to look forward to besides quarterly reports, it's changed me, made me realize I can have a career and a life, that maybe I don't have to choose." Nathan stood slowly. "I wasn't accusing you of anything. I just needed to understand." "And now you do?" "I think so." He moved closer, and Victoria's breath caught. "You scared me at first, the most powerful person in the company suddenly showing up at my daughter's school, taking interest in our lives. I kept waiting for the catch, for the moment when it would turn into something uncomfortable. But it hasn't." "No, it hasn't." Nathan stopped a few feet away, maintaining professional distance even though they were alone behind closed doors. "Sophie talks about you constantly. The paint lady did this, the paint lady said that. Last night she told me she wants to be a CEO when she grows up because CEOs help people." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. "She said that?" "She did. And I realized something." Nathan's voice softened. "Emily would have liked you, my wife. She always said I needed more people in my life who challenged me to be better, who saw the world differently. She would have liked that you don't take any of my carefully constructed boundaries seriously." It was the first time Nathan had mentioned his wife directly to Victoria. The intimacy of it made her chest tight. "I would have liked to meet her," Victoria said quietly. "She would have absolutely terrified you at first. She was fierce about protecting the people she loved. She would have grilled you about your intentions, made sure you weren't going to hurt Sophie." Nathan smiled, but it was bittersweet. "But then she would have seen the way you look at Sophie's paintings, like they're museum pieces. The way you sit on the floor, and get paint in your hair and don't care about ruining your expensive clothes. And she would have known you were genuine. I miss her, Nathan continued, voice rough. Every single day. And for a long time, I thought that was all I was allowed to feel, like moving forward meant betraying her memory. But Emily made me promise something before she died. She made me promise I wouldn't stop living, that I'd let Sophie see what happiness looked like, even after losing her mother. Victoria couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand something, Nathan said. Having you in our lives, it's not betraying Emily's memory. It's honoring the promise I made to her, to keep living, to show Sophie that loss doesn't have to mean the end of everything. Nathan, Victoria's voice cracked. You asked me once at the gala if my age bothered me, he said. And I left before answering because Sophie was waiting. But the real answer is no. Your age doesn't bother me. What bothered me was the timing. I wasn't ready to let anyone else in. Wasn't ready to feel anything beyond just getting through each day. And now? Nathan looked at her with an expression that made her heart stop. Now I think maybe I am. Before Victoria could process that, before she could figure out what to say, James knocked on the door. Ms. Sinclair, your 2 o'clock is here. The spell broke. Nathan stepped back, professional distance reasserting itself. I should go, he said. I'll see you tomorrow night? Tomorrow night, Victoria confirmed. After he left, she stood in her office for a long time, staring at the concert ticket in her hand and trying to calm her racing heart. Something was shifting between them, something that felt dangerous and wonderful and absolutely terrifying. The night of the concert, Victoria changed outfits 4 times before settling on dark jeans, ankle boots, and a cashmere sweater. Casual, but not too casual. She didn't want to show up looking like she was attending a board meeting, but she also didn't want to look like she was trying too hard. You're overthinking it, she told her reflection. The reflection looked unconvinced. She arrived at Fairfield Elementary at 6:20, clutching the wrapped art set and feeling absurdly nervous. The parking lot was already half full, parents and families streaming toward the brightly lit entrance. Paper snowflakes decorated the windows, and someone had hung a banner that read, Winter Wonderful Concert, in slightly crooked letters. Inside, the gymnasium had been transformed. White Christmas lights were strung across the ceiling. Risers were set up at one end for the performers. Rows of folding chairs filled the floor, and the whole space smelled like coffee and cinnamon from the PTA's bake sale table. Victoria scanned the crowd, feeling out of place among the families and couples and groups of proud grandparents. Victoria! She turned to see Nathan waving from the 3rd row. He'd saved her a seat beside him, and Sophie was already on stage with her class, wearing a green dress and a headband with paper reindeer antlers. Victoria made her way over, weaving through the chairs. You made it, Nathan said, and his smile was genuine. He was wearing jeans and a button-down shirt, more relaxed than she'd ever seen him at the office. Of course I made it. Victoria sat down, setting the wrapped gift on her lap. How's Sophie doing? Completely wired. She's been vibrating with excitement since we got here. Nathan pointed to the stage where Sophie was whispering intensely to the girl next to her. That's Emma, her best friend. They've been practicing together all week. The Emma who built the potato cat in art class? Nathan laughed. The very same. The gymnasium continued to fill. Victoria watched parents settling in, wrangling younger siblings, setting up phones to record. Everyone seemed to know everyone else, calling greetings across the room, saving seats for friends, swapping stories about their kids' rehearsal mishaps. It was warm and chaotic, and completely foreign to Victoria's usual world. Does this feel weird? Nathan asked quietly. What? Being here, with all the suburban family stuff. It's pretty far from executive boardrooms. Victoria considered lying, then decided against it. A little, but good weird, like discovering a whole world I didn't know existed. Welcome to the exciting life of single parent at elementary school events. Nathan gestured around the gym. See that dad in the Bears jersey? That's Marcus's father. He coaches Little League and talks about it constantly. The woman in the red scarf runs the PTA and knows everything about everyone. The couple in matching sweaters brought homemade cookies that are definitely going to sell out at the bake sale. You know everyone. Not everyone. But after 6 years of school events, you start to recognize faces. He paused. I should warn you, people are going to be curious about you. New faces at these things tend to attract attention. As if on cue, a woman with perfect blonde highlights leaned over from the row behind them. "Hi, I don't think we've met. I'm Jessica, Emma's mom. Victoria, I volunteer with the art program." "Oh, you're the paint lady. Emma talks about you all the time. Sophie, too." Jessica's smile was friendly and genuinely curious. "It's so nice of you to support the arts. The program was really struggling before you came along. I'm happy to help." "Well, the kids love having you. Emma says you're the only grown-up who doesn't tell them what their art is supposed to look like." Jessica laughed, which apparently is a big deal in second grade. Before Victoria could respond, the lights dimmed. Principal Martinez walked to the center of the gym with a microphone. "Welcome everyone to Fairfield Elementary's Winter Wonderful Concert," the crowd applauded. On stage, 50 second graders shifted nervously. "Our students have been working very hard to prepare tonight's performance," Dr. Martinez continued. "So please sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. And remember, if anyone pulls a fire alarm this year, we're rescheduling for January." Light laughter rippled through the audience. Apparently that had happened before. The concert began with Jingle Bells, and Nathan was right. It was gloriously off-key. Half the kids were singing too loud, the other half couldn't be heard at all, and at least 3 of them were doing completely different hand motions than everyone else. It was perfect. Victoria watched Sophie in the front row, singing with such fierce concentration that her face was scrunched up. She was slightly ahead of the beat, and definitely making up some of the words, but her enthusiasm was infectious. Nathan leaned over. "She's giving it everything she's got." "I can see that. Last year she forgot all the words to Rudolph and just hummed loudly until she remembered them again." Victoria bit back a laugh. "How did that go?" "She hummed for approximately 2 minutes. It was legendary." They made it through Jingle Bell Rock, Frosty the Snowman, and something called the Dreidel Song that involved spinning in circles. 2 kids bumped into each other during the spinning and had to be gently repositioned by a mortified-looking teacher. During We Wish You a Merry Christmas, Victoria felt Nathan's shoulder press against hers. The contact was brief, probably accidental, but it sent warmth through her entire body. She glanced over and found him already looking at her. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly, barely audible over the singing. "Thank you for inviting me. Sophie wanted you here. She said it wouldn't be the same without the paint lady." "Just Sophie?" Nathan's expression shifted, something vulnerable flickering across his face. "No, not just Sophie." The final song was Silent Night, and the gym fell genuinely quiet as the children's voices rose, surprisingly sweet and clear. Someone had dimmed the lights even further, and the Christmas lights overhead cast everything in a soft glow. Victoria felt something crack open in her chest. This moment, sitting in a crowded gymnasium, watching second graders sing, feeling Nathan's warmth beside her, was so far from anything she'd planned for her life. But it felt more real than anything she'd experienced in years. When the concert ended, the applause was thunderous. Parents leaped to their feet, phones out, voices calling their kids' names. On stage, Sophie was beaming so hard her whole face glowed. She spotted Victoria and Nathan and waved frantically. "Did you see me? Did you see me?" Sophie yelled over the noise. Nathan gave her a thumbs up. Victoria clapped harder. After the kids filed off stage, chaos erupted. Parents crowded around, congratulating their children, taking photos, comparing notes on which songs were best. Victoria found herself swept up in it, accepting a cookie from the PTA table, homemade chocolate chip, still warm, and making small talk with Jessica about art supplies. When Sophie finally made it to them, she launched herself at Nathan first. "Daddy, I remembered all the words, even the hard parts." "You were amazing, Sophie Bug." Nathan kissed the top of her head. "Best singer up there." "Really? Would I lie to you?" Sophie pulled back, considering. "No, you're terrible at lying. Remember when you tried to tell me the vegetables were candy? That was a strategic parenting decision. It was a lie. A well-intentioned lie." Sophie giggled and then turned to Victoria. "Paint lady, you came." "Of course I came. I promised." "Did you like it? Did you like the songs? I messed up a little bit in Jingle Bell Rock, but I don't think anyone noticed." "I thought you were perfect," Victoria said honestly. "My antlers kept sliding down, but I fixed them." Sophie adjusted the paper reindeer headband proudly. "Emma's fell off completely during Frosty." "I saw that. You both handled it very professionally." Sophie's eyes lit up at being called professional. That's what Mrs. Palmer said. Victoria held out the wrapped gift. I brought you something for doing such a great job. Sophie's eyes went wide. For me? For you. With Nathan's permission, Sophie tore into the wrapping paper, revealing the dragon-decorated art set. Her gasp was audible even in the noisy gymnasium. Paint lady, this is the fancy kind, with the real watercolors and everything. I thought you might like it. Sophie looked up at her with an expression of pure joy. This is the best present ever. Can I hug you? Victoria's throat tightened. Yes? Sophie threw her arms around Victoria's waist, squeezing tight. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Over Sophie's head, Victoria met Nathan's eyes. He was watching them with an expression she couldn't quite name, soft and surprised and something deeper. You didn't have to do that, he said quietly. I wanted to. It's too much, Nathan. Victoria waited until he met her eyes again. Let me do this, please. He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay. Around them, the crowd was starting to disperse. Parents were bundling kids into coats, gathering programs and bake sale purchases. Can the paint lady come get hot chocolate with us? Sophie asked, looking between them hopefully. You promised, remember? I remember, Nathan said. If Victoria still wants to. I definitely still want to. They ended up at a small coffee shop 3 blocks from the school, the kind of place with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. Sophie ordered hot chocolate with extra marshmallows and whipped cream. Nathan got black coffee. Victoria ordered a latte and tried not to feel like she was in a dream. They sat at a corner table by the window, watching the snow fall outside. Sophie talked nonstop about the concert, about how Jamie forgot his words again, about how Mrs. Palmer said they might do another concert in the spring. Victoria listened and sipped her latte and felt more content than she could remember feeling in years. Can I use the markers now? Sophie asked, eyeing the art set that sat beside her chair. After hot chocolate, Nathan said. I don't trust you not to draw on the table. I wouldn't draw on the table. Sophie, I'd only draw on the table a little bit. Nathan gave her a look and Sophie giggled into her hot chocolate, getting whipped cream on her nose. You've got a little something, Victoria said, gesturing to her own nose. Sophie wiped at her face, missing completely. Nathan leaned over with a napkin and got it, gentle and practiced. Watching them together, Victoria felt that familiar ache in her chest. This was what family looked like. Not expensive furniture or impressive resumes or power dynamics, just a father and daughter taking care of each other in small, tender ways. Paint lady? Sophie said, pulling Victoria from her thoughts. Yeah? Are you going to come to the spring concert too? Victoria glanced at Nathan, who was suddenly very focused on his coffee. If you want me to. I do want you to. You're good luck. I didn't mess up hardly at all tonight. That's because you practiced really hard. But also you were there, Sophie insisted with 7-year-old logic. You made it more special. Nathan cleared his throat. Sophie, maybe Victoria has other things going on in the spring? I'll be there, Victoria interrupted. If you'll have me. Sophie beamed. Nathan's expression did something complicated. They stayed until Sophie started yawning, slumped against her father's side with chocolate mustache fading from her upper lip. The art set sat open on the table, and she'd drawn 3 pictures, one of the concert, one of a dragon, purple, naturally, and one of 3 stick figures labeled Daddy, Me, and Paint Lady. Victoria stared at that third drawing for a long time. We should get her home, Nathan said softly, not wanting to wake her. School tomorrow. Of course. They gathered their things quietly. Nathan lifted Sophie into his arms. She was getting too big for this, but she was tired enough that she just wrapped her arms around his neck and dozed against his shoulder. Outside, the snow had picked up. Fat flakes fell through the glow of streetlights, and the city had that muffled quiet that only comes with fresh snow. Where are you parked? Nathan asked. 2 blocks that way, Victoria pointed. We're the other direction. I'll walk you to your car. You don't have to. I know. So they walked together through the snowy Chicago streets, Sophie sleeping on Nathan's shoulder, their breath visible in the cold air. Victoria carried the art set and Sophie's concert program, feeling like she was in one of those movie moments that seemed too perfect to be real. At her car, Victoria fumbled with her keys, suddenly not wanting the night to end. "Thank you for tonight," she said, "for letting me be part of this." Nathan shifted Sophie's weight carefully. "Thank you for coming, for caring." He paused, snow catching in his dark hair. "Victoria, I need to tell you something." Her heart stopped. "Okay. Whatever this is becoming, it scares the hell out of me." Victoria felt her stomach drop. "Nathan, let me finish." His voice was gentle but firm. "It scares me because I haven't felt this way about anyone since Emily. Because letting you into our lives means risking Sophie getting hurt if things don't work out. Because the timing is complicated and the power dynamic at work is complicated, and my daughter is already drawing pictures with you in them." Victoria couldn't breathe. "I understand. But," Nathan continued, and his eyes met hers in the glow of the streetlight, "I think you're worth being scared for. I think maybe Sophie and I have been living in our safe little bubble for too long, and I think Emily would tell me I'm an idiot if I let fear stop me from taking a chance on someone who makes my daughter light up like you do." "Just Sophie?" Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. Nathan smiled, soft and real. "No, not just Sophie." The snow fell around them, and Victoria felt like the world had narrowed to just this moment. Nathan holding his sleeping daughter, looking at her like she was something precious and terrifying and worth the risk. "I'm scared too," Victoria admitted. "I don't know how to do this. Relationships, families, being someone people depend on. I'm good at spreadsheets and negotiations and making profit margins go up. But this?" She gestured helplessly between them. "I have no idea what I'm doing. Nobody does. We're all just figuring it out as we go. What if I'm terrible at it?" "You won't be. You show up covered in paint every Tuesday. You bought Sophie a dragon art set because you remembered one conversation about her drawing. You stood up to your board because you refused to stop volunteering." Nathan's voice was warm despite the cold. "You're already better at this than you think." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. "I really care about her. About both of you. I know. That's what makes this so scary and so worth it." Sophie stirred slightly in Nathan's arms, mumbling something about purple dragons in her sleep. "I should get her home," Nathan said reluctantly. "But Victoria?" "Yeah? I'd like to see you this weekend, outside of work, outside of school, just us. If you want." Victoria's heart soared. "I want. Lunch on Saturday? There's a place Sophie loves, but we could go somewhere else. Wherever Sophie wants is perfect." Nathan's smile could have melted the snow around them. "Okay, I'll text you details." "Okay." They stood there for another moment, neither wanting to be the first to leave. Then Sophie shifted again, and Nathan took a step back. "Good night, Victoria." "Good night." She watched him walk away through the falling snow, his daughter secure in his arms, and felt like something fundamental had changed. Not just between them, but inside herself. For years, she'd measured her life by achievements and acquisitions, by how high she could climb and how much she could control. But standing in the snowy parking lot, watching Nathan and Sophie disappear around the corner, Victoria realized that the best things in life couldn't be planned or negotiated. They could only be lived. She drove home through the quiet city streets, past her usual exit to the penthouse, and made a decision. On Monday, she'd start looking for a new apartment, something smaller, warmer. Maybe even in a neighborhood with families and parks and coffee shops that served hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. Because she was done living in a glass tower, alone with her empire. She was ready to build something real. Saturday morning arrived cold and bright, the kind of winter day where the sun glinted off fresh snow and made everything look cleaner than it actually was. Victoria woke up at 6:30 out of habit, then realized she had nowhere to be until lunch and felt a strange flutter of panic. No meetings, no conference calls, no urgent emails demanding immediate attention, just lunch with Nathan and Sophie. She lay in bed for another 20 minutes, staring at the ceiling and wondering what the hell she was doing. This wasn't some corporate negotiation where she could research the other party, prepare talking points, and control the outcome. This was real life with real people who could hurt her in ways no business deal ever could. Her phone buzzed, a text from Nathan. "Sophie wants to know if you like pizza." Victoria smiled despite her nerves. "Love it. Good. She's been worried you only eat fancy food. Tell her I'm very adaptable." She says adaptable is a big word for Saturday morning. She's not wrong. There was a pause, then, "See you at noon. The place is called Angelo's on Division. Very not fancy. Perfect." Victoria spent the next hour doing something she almost never did, trying on multiple outfits before deciding on one. Jeans again, a soft blue sweater, her most comfortable boots. She looked like a normal person, not a CEO, not a power player, just Victoria. It felt strange and wonderful, and absolutely terrifying. Angelo's turned out to be exactly as advertised. A neighborhood pizza place with checkered tablecloths, mismatched chairs, and photos of someone's Italian grandmother covering the walls. The smell of garlic and baking dough hit Victoria the moment she walked in. She spotted Nathan and Sophie in a booth near the back. Sophie saw her first and waved so enthusiastically she nearly knocked over her water glass. "Paint lady, you came!" "Of course I came." Victoria slid into the booth across from them. "Did you think I wouldn't?" Daddy said sometimes grown-ups get busy and have to cancel plans. Nathan looked slightly embarrassed. "I was managing expectations." "I'm here," Victoria said firmly. "No cancellations." Sophie beamed and immediately launched into an explanation of Angelo's complex pizza ranking system, which apparently she and her father had been perfecting for 3 years. Pepperoni was good, but basic. Sausage and mushroom was advanced level. Hawaiian was controversial, and they had strong opinions about it. "Pineapple doesn't belong on pizza," Sophie declared with the certainty of someone who'd never questioned this truth. "That's a matter of debate," Nathan said mildly. "It's not a debate, Daddy. It's a fact." Victoria bit back a laugh. "What if I like pineapple on pizza?" Sophie's eyes went wide. "Do you?" "I don't know. I've never tried it." "Then how do you know you like it?" "I don't. That's why I said what if." Sophie considered this seriously. "We should get one piece with pineapple so you can try it and then you'll know for sure that it's wrong." "That seems fair." Nathan was watching them with an expression Victoria was learning to recognize. That soft look he got when Sophie was being particularly Sophie-like. When their eyes met across the table, he smiled. "What?" Victoria asked. "Nothing. You're just good with her." "She makes it easy." They ordered a large pepperoni, a small sausage and mushroom for Nathan, and a single slice of Hawaiian for Victoria's education. When the pizza arrived, Sophie watched with intense focus as Victoria took her first bite of the controversial pineapple slice. "Well?" Sophie demanded. Victoria chewed thoughtfully. "It's interesting." "Interesting bad or interesting good?" "Interesting like I can see why some people would like it, but I think I prefer pepperoni." Sophie looked triumphant. "I told you, pineapple is wrong." "She's very passionate about pizza toppings," Nathan said, stealing a piece of pepperoni from the large pie. "I noticed. Where does she get that from?" "Her mother." Nathan said it easily, but Victoria saw something flicker in his expression. Emily had very strong opinions about food. She once wrote a 3-page email to a restaurant explaining why their carbonara was historically inaccurate. Sophie giggled. "Mommy was funny." "She was. Very funny." Nathan's voice was warm with memory, not heavy with grief. "She would have liked this." "The 3 of us having lunch, arguing about pizza?" Victoria felt her chest tighten. "Yeah?" "Yeah. She hated that I was alone so much after she died. She made me promise I'd find people to have lunch with. To not let Sophie grow up thinking it was just the 2 of us against the world. Daddy cried when he promised," Sophie said matter-of-factly, reaching for another slice. "But he said it was okay to cry when you're making important promises." Nathan cleared his throat. "Sophie, maybe it's true, though. You said we should always tell the truth." "I did say that." Victoria looked at Nathan across the table, this man who'd lost everything and somehow kept going, who talked to his daughter about feelings and kept promises to his dead wife, and still found room to let someone new into their carefully constructed world. "Emily sounds like she was amazing," Victoria said quietly. "She was. But she's also gone." Nathan met her eyes. "And I'm here. We're here. And that's okay too." The moment stretched between them, heavy with meaning, until Sophie broke it by asking if they could get cannolis for dessert, because she'd been very good about eating her vegetables all week and deserved something with cream inside. After lunch, they walked to a park 2 blocks away. The snow from earlier in the week was still thick on the ground, and kids were everywhere. building snowmen, having snowball fights, sledding down the small hill at the park's edge. Sophie ran ahead to the swings, and Victoria found herself walking beside Nathan in comfortable silence. "Can I ask you something?" Nathan said after a moment. "Sure." "What did you do before this? Before the volunteering and the concerts and the Saturday pizza lunches?" Victoria thought about her old life. "I worked. That's basically it. I'd go to the office at 6, leave around 8 or 9. Weekends were for catching up on emails and preparing for Monday. I had lunch with my father once a month, dinner with clients when necessary, and that was the extent of my social calendar." "That sounds lonely." "It was. I just didn't realize it until I saw what I was missing." Victoria watched Sophie pumping her legs on the swing, pigtails flying. "What about you? What did you do before I crashed your carefully organized life?" Nathan laughed. "Crashed is a strong word, but honestly, same thing. Work, pick up Sophie, dinner, bedtime, repeat. Weekends were homework and laundry and meal prep for the week. We had a routine and we stuck to it because routines felt safe. And now? Now Sophie wants to know if you can come to the aquarium with us next weekend. Now she's drawing pictures with 3 people instead of 2. Now I'm having lunch on Saturday instead of doing laundry." He paused. "Now I feel like maybe we're living instead of just surviving." Victoria felt warmth spread through her chest. "I like that." "Me too." They reached the swings, and Sophie immediately demanded that Victoria push her. "Higher, higher! Like you're launching me into space." "I don't think the paint lady wants to launch you into space," Nathan said, who would go to 2nd grade. "Jamie could go instead. He likes space." Victoria pushed the swing, and Sophie shrieked with delight, and for 20 minutes Victoria forgot about board meetings and quarterly reports and the complicated politics of being a CEO. She was just a woman in a park, pushing a little girl on a swing while the girl's father watched with a smile that made Victoria's heart do complicated things. When Sophie finally got tired of swinging, she announced she wanted to build a snowman. Not just any snowman, the best snowman the park had ever seen. "That's ambitious," Nathan said. "You say that about everything I do." "Because you're always ambitious." They spent the next 45 minutes building a snowman that was definitely not the best the park had ever seen, but was endearingly lopsided. Sophie insisted on giving it stick arms that were completely different lengths and a smile made from small rocks that made it look slightly deranged. "Perfect," Sophie declared, stepping back to admire their work. "It's definitely something," Nathan agreed. Victoria was laughing when her phone rang. She pulled it out, saw James's name, and felt reality come crashing back. "I'm sorry, I have to take this," she said, stepping away from the snowman. "Ms. Sinclair, I'm so sorry to bother you on the weekend," James said, sounding genuinely distressed. "But we have a situation. The Singapore team just sent over their quarterly projections, and the numbers are way off from what we were expecting. Richard Holloway is calling an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning at 8. Victoria felt her jaw tighten. "Tomorrow is Sunday." "I know, but he says it can't wait. He's already contacted the board." Of course he had. Richard had been looking for an excuse to undermine her ever since the confrontation about Nathan. An emergency weekend meeting that she supposedly called would make her look reactive and panicked. "Tell Richard I'll review the numbers tonight and we can meet Monday morning." He said if you're not available tomorrow, he'll handle it himself, which meant he'd spin the narrative however he wanted, probably positioning himself as the steady hand while Victoria was off doing whatever frivolous things CEOs who'd lost their focus did on weekends. Victoria looked back at Nathan and Sophie, who were now adding pinecone eyes to their deranged snowman. Sophie was laughing at something Nathan said, her cheeks pink from the cold. "Fine," Victoria said, hating every word. "Tell him I'll be there at 8. She hung up and walked back to them, trying to smooth her expression. "Everything okay?" Nathan asked, reading her face immediately. "Work crisis. I have to go into the office tomorrow morning." "On Sunday?" "Apparently Singapore's quarterly numbers are concerning and it can't wait until Monday." Sophie looked up from the snowman. "But tomorrow is Sunday. Sundays are for sleeping late and making pancakes." "I know, sweetie, but sometimes grown-ups have to work even on weekends." Sophie's face fell. "That's not fair." "You're right. It's not." Nathan was watching Victoria carefully. "Do you have to go?" "If I don't, Richard Holloway will use it against me. He'll say I'm not taking the Singapore account seriously, that I'm distracted." Victoria hated how bitter she sounded. "It's a power play." "Can you push back?" I am pushing back by showing up and proving he's manufacturing a crisis. Victoria shoved her phone back in her pocket. Sorry, this isn't your problem. It affects you, which makes it our problem. The hour made Victoria's throat tight. I should probably go. I need to review the numbers before tomorrow so I know what I'm walking into. Sophie looked like she might cry. But we were going to get hot chocolate after the snowman. Victoria knelt down in the snow. I know, and I'm really sorry, but I promise we'll get hot chocolate another time, okay? You promise, promise? I promise, promise. Sophie studied her face with that intense child focus, looking for any hint of dishonesty, then nodded reluctantly. Okay, but next time we get extra marshmallows. Deal. Victoria stood and met Nathan's eyes. He looked concerned and understanding and slightly frustrated all at once. I'll walk you to your car, he said. You don't have to. I know. They left Sophie putting finishing touches on the snowman and walked in silence for half a block. Finally, Nathan spoke. This is going to keep happening, isn't it? Victoria felt her stomach drop. What do you mean? Work emergencies on weekends, crisis meetings that can't wait. You having to choose between being here and being there. He wasn't accusatory, just stating facts. I'm not criticizing. I just need to understand what this looks like. I don't know, Victoria admitted. I'm trying to find balance, but people at the company are actively working against me. They see any time I spend away from work as proof that I'm losing focus. Are you? No. I'm more focused than I've ever been. But I'm focusing on different things now. Not just profit margins and shareholder value, but actually having a life. She stopped walking and turned to face him. I don't want to choose between my career and this, between success and happiness. Why can't I have both? You can, but it's going to be hard. People are going to test you, push your boundaries, see how far they can pull you back into the old patterns. Nathan's voice was gentle but firm. You need to decide what you're willing to fight for. I'm willing to fight for this. For us. Whatever this is. I believe you. But Sophie needs consistency. She needs to know that when someone promises hot chocolate, they're going to be there for hot chocolate. Not stuck in an emergency meeting that could have waited until Monday. The words stung because they were true. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm still figuring this out. I know you are. Nathan reached out and squeezed her hand briefly. Just don't lose yourself trying to prove something to people who are determined to see you fail anyway. They reached Victoria's car. She wanted to say something meaningful, something that would fix the disappointment she'd seen in Sophie's face, but the words wouldn't come. I'll text you after the meeting tomorrow, she said instead. Okay. Nathan, it's okay, Victoria, really. We knew this wasn't going to be simple. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Just don't forget what you told me about what actually matters. She watched him walk back toward the park, hands in his pockets, and felt something twist in her chest. She'd finally found something real, something worth fighting for, and she was already screwing it up. Victoria spent the rest of Saturday afternoon and evening buried in spreadsheets, reviewing Singapore's quarterly projections and trying to find the crisis that supposedly justified an emergency Sunday meeting. By 11 p.m., she'd concluded there wasn't one. The numbers were slightly lower than projected, but within acceptable variance. Nothing that required immediate action, which meant Richard was absolutely manufacturing drama. She showed up at the office Sunday morning at 7:30, dressed in her full CEO armor. Tailored suit, sharp heels, expression that could cut glass. If Richard wanted a fight, she'd give him one. The conference room was already full. Richard sat at the head of the table like he owned it, surrounded by his allies on the board. Margaret Chen was there, looking satisfied. A few other executives who'd been quietly undermining Victoria for months. Victoria, Richard said smoothly. Thank you for joining us. I know weekends are precious. The implication was clear. Unlike him, apparently, she wasn't dedicated enough to sacrifice personal time. Let's get to it, Victoria said, sitting down and opening her laptop. What exactly is the crisis? Richard pulled up a presentation. As you can see, Singapore's quarterly numbers are down 17% from our projections. 12%, Victoria interrupted, and only if you're using the aggressive growth model from last quarter. If you use the conservative model we discussed in October, we're actually up 3%. Richard's smile tightened. The board approved the aggressive model. The board discussed both models and agreed to monitor which was more accurate. Turns out the conservative model was right. Victoria pulled up her own analysis. Singapore expanded into 3 new markets this quarter. That requires upfront investment, which temporarily impacts margins but sets us up for sustained growth. This is exactly what we predicted would happen. Margaret leaned forward. Are you suggesting there's no issue here? I'm saying there's no crisis. There's a normal business pattern that we anticipated and planned for. Victoria looked around the table, which makes me wonder why we're all here on a Sunday morning instead of waiting for the regular Monday meeting. Some of us take our responsibilities seriously enough to address concerns immediately, Richard said. And some of us understand the difference between a genuine emergency and a manufactured crisis designed to make the CEO look bad. Victoria closed her laptop. If anyone has legitimate concerns about Singapore's performance, I'm happy to discuss them tomorrow during business hours. But I'm not going to participate in political theater. She stood up. Where are you going? Margaret asked sharply. To have the Sunday I canceled plans for. If there are actual emergencies that require my attention, James has my number. Victoria looked directly at Richard. But manufactured drama? That can wait until Monday. She walked out of the conference room, heart pounding, fully expecting someone to call her back. No one did. In the parking garage, Victoria sat in her car for a long moment, hands shaking slightly. She just walked out of a board meeting, walked out on Richard Holloway and Margaret Chen and everyone who'd been waiting for her to fail. It was terrifying and exhilarating and absolutely necessary. She pulled out her phone and texted Nathan. Crisis was fake. I'm free. Any chance that hot chocolate offer is still good? The response came quickly. Sophie's going to lose her mind. Where are you? Heading your way. Still owe someone extra marshmallows. 20 minutes later, Victoria pulled up outside Nathan's apartment building, a modest 3-story walk-up in a residential neighborhood. Nathan and Sophie were waiting on the front steps, both bundled up against the cold. Sophie saw her and started jumping. You came! Daddy said you might be busy, but you came! Victoria got out of the car and Sophie ran to her, wrapping her arms around Victoria's waist. I promised, didn't I? Victoria said, hugging her back. But grown-ups break promises sometimes. Jamie's mom was supposed to come to his baseball game and she had to work instead, and he was really sad. Well, I decided work could wait. Hot chocolate is more important. Sophie pulled back, studying her face. Really? Really? Nathan walked over, his expression warm. You walked out of the meeting. I did. How do you feel? Victoria considered this. Terrified, but also kind of amazing. Good. Being terrified means you're doing something that matters. He smiled. Come on, let's get that hot chocolate before Sophie explodes from excitement. They went to the same coffee shop from the night of the concert. Sophie ordered her usual, hot chocolate with extra marshmallows and whipped cream, and talked nonstop about how she'd been worried Victoria wouldn't come, but Daddy said to have faith, and she did have faith, even though it was hard. I'm sorry I worried you, Victoria said. The meeting turned out to be something that didn't actually need to happen. Someone was trying to make me look bad. Sophie's eyes went wide. That's mean. Why would someone do that? Because some people think being successful means making other people fail. That's a stupid way to be successful. Sophie, Nathan said mildly, language. But it is stupid. It is, Victoria agreed, but sometimes you have to deal with stupid people when you're in charge of a company. When I'm in charge of a company, I'm only going to hire nice people, Sophie declared, and we're going to have hot chocolate meetings instead of boring meetings. Nathan and Victoria exchanged amused looks over Sophie's head. That sounds like a much better business model, Nathan said. After hot chocolate, they walked through the neighborhood. The snow had started falling again, light flakes that caught in Sophie's hair and made everything feel magical. Sophie ran ahead, trying to catch snowflakes on her tongue, while Nathan and Victoria followed at a slower pace. Thank you for coming back, Nathan said quietly. Thank you for still being willing to see me after I bailed yesterday. You didn't bail. You had a work obligation. A fake work obligation designed to test whether I'd choose career over everything else. Victoria watched Sophie spin in circles, arms out, face turned up to the falling snow. I'm tired of that test. I'm tired of having to prove that caring about things outside of work doesn't make me weak. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Try telling that to Richard Holloway. Nathan was quiet for a moment. Can I ask you something? Always. What would happen if you just stopped caring what Richard Holloway thinks? Victoria blinked. What do you mean? I mean, you're the CEO. You're good at your job. The numbers prove it. So what if you just did what you thought was right and stopped trying to manage everyone else's opinions of you? That's not how corporate politics work. Maybe it should be. The simple statement hit Victoria harder than it should have. She'd spent years playing the game, managing perceptions, carefully crafting her image. But what if she just stopped? You make it sound easy, she said. It's not easy, but it might be simpler than you think. Nathan glanced at her. You already stood up to the board once. You already walked out of a meeting today. You're already choosing differently. Maybe you just need to commit to it fully. Sophie came running back, breathless and covered in snowflakes. Can we get pizza again? I'm hungry and I want pizza. We just had hot chocolate, Nathan said. But I'm still hungry. Growing girls need food. You're always growing and always hungry. That's because I'm 7, Victoria laughed. I could eat. Nathan looked at her. You sure? You just walked out of a board meeting. You're probably going to have fallout to deal with tomorrow. All the more reason to eat pizza now. Victoria met his eyes. I'm choosing this. I'm choosing to be here. Something shifted in Nathan's expression. Okay, pizza it is. They ended up back at Angelo's, and Sophie was thrilled to educate Victoria on pizza toppings all over again. Victoria found herself relaxing in a way she never had during work dinners or client lunches. No one was trying to impress her or manipulate her or get something from her. They were just having pizza. When they finished eating and stepped outside, the snow was falling harder now, coating the streets and sidewalks. Sophie's eyes lit up. Snowball fight! Before Nathan could protest, she packed a snowball and threw it at him. It hit him square in the chest. Oh, you're going to pay for that, Nathan said, grinning. You have to catch me first. What followed was 10 minutes of complete chaos. Sophie ran shrieking through the snowy street, Nathan chasing her, both of them pelting each other with snowballs. Victoria stood on the sidewalk laughing until Sophie ran over and grabbed her hand. Help me, Daddy's winning. Absolutely not, Nathan called. No forming alliances. Too late! Victoria packed a snowball and threw it at Nathan. Her aim was terrible. It sailed past him and hit a lamppost, but Sophie cheered like Victoria had made an Olympic shot. Nathan retaliated, and suddenly Victoria was running through the snow, laughing so hard she could barely breathe, with Sophie shrieking encouragement and Nathan chasing both of them with an armful of snowballs. They finally collapsed in a snowdrift, all 3 of them breathing hard and covered in snow. Sophie was giggling uncontrollably, and Nathan's hair was full of snowflakes, and Victoria realized with sudden clarity that this was the happiest she'd been in years. Not closing a deal, not giving a perfect presentation, not receiving praise from the board, just lying in the snow with a man and his daughter, laughing like she was 7 years old again. Best Sunday ever, Sophie declared, making snow angels with enthusiastic arm flaps. Agreed, Victoria said. Nathan turned his head to look at her. Yeah? Yeah. His smile was soft and real, and Victoria felt her heart do that complicated thing again. This was what she'd been missing. Not success or power or recognition, but simple moments that mattered because of who you shared them with. Eventually, they dragged themselves up, brushing snow from their clothes. Sophie was shivering despite her enthusiasm, so Nathan announced it was time to head home. At Victoria's car, Sophie hugged her tight. Promise you'll come to art class on Tuesday? I promise, promise. Extra marshmallows, promise? Extra marshmallows, promise. Satisfied, Sophie ran to their car, leaving Nathan and Victoria standing in the falling snow. Thank you for today, Victoria said, for giving me another chance after I messed up yesterday. You didn't mess up. You had a complicated situation and you handled it. Nathan reached out and brushed a snowflake from her hair. And then you chose to come back. That's what matters. I'm going to keep choosing this. Choosing you. Both of you. I know. Nathan's voice was warm. And we're going to keep being here. Victoria drove home through the snowy streets, her expensive clothes damp and rumpled, her hair a mess, her carefully constructed CEO image completely destroyed. She'd never felt more like herself. Monday morning arrived with the inevitable fallout. Victoria walked into the office to find an email from Richard Holloway requesting a private meeting, another from Margaret Chen expressing concern about her behavior, and a terse message from her father asking what the hell she thought she was doing. She handled Richard first. He showed up at her office at 9, all false concern and passive aggression. "Victoria, we need to discuss your conduct at yesterday's meeting." "You mean the meeting that shouldn't have happened? The manufactured crisis you used to try to make me look bad?" Victoria didn't bother with pleasantries. "I've been reviewing the numbers, Richard. Singapore is fine, better than fine. So what was yesterday really about?" Richard's jaw tightened. "It was about ensuring proper oversight. It was about testing whether you could still control me, whether you could snap your fingers and make me jump." Victoria leaned back in her chair. "The answer is no. If there's a genuine emergency, I'll be there, but I won't waste my time or anyone else's on political theater. The board won't appreciate your attitude. Then maybe the board should focus on actual performance metrics instead of trying to micromanage my schedule." Victoria pulled up her laptop. "Speaking of which, our quarterly numbers are the strongest they've been in 3 years. Revenue is up, client retention is up, employee satisfaction is up. So unless you have legitimate concerns about the business, we're done here." Richard stood, his expression cold. "You're making enemies, Victoria." "I've always had enemies, Richard. I just stopped caring what they think." After he left, Victoria sat at her desk and realized her hands weren't shaking. She'd just dismissed Richard Holloway, who'd been with the company for 20 years and had the ear of half the board, and she felt fine. Better than fine. She felt powerful in a way that had nothing to do with intimidation or fear. The rest of the week passed in a strange balance. Work was tense. Richard and his allies were clearly strategizing, and Victoria could feel the pressure mounting. But every Tuesday she left at 3 for art class. Every evening she left by 6 instead of 8. And when Sophie texted her a picture of a purple dragon she'd painted with her new art set, Victoria smiled in the middle of a budget meeting and didn't care who noticed. On Friday evening, Nathan called. "Hey, you busy?" Victoria looked at the stack of reports on her desk. Define busy. "Fair point. Listen, I know this is last minute, but Sophie wants to know if you want to come over for dinner tomorrow night. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and whatever vegetable I can convince her to eat." Victoria's heart jumped. "Dinner at your place?" "Yeah, if that's weird, we can—" "It's not weird, I'd love to." "Really?" "Because Sophie's been planning the menu all week, and I want to manage expectations. It's going to be very kid-friendly." "That's perfect." There was a pause, and then Nathan's voice softened. "Victoria, this is me inviting you into our home, into the life we've built. I need you to understand what that means." "I understand." "Do you?" "Because once you cross that threshold, once Sophie sees you in our space, she's going to assume you're staying. She's going to build you into her understanding of what family looks like. And if this doesn't work out, if you decide this is too complicated or too messy, she's the one who gets hurt." Victoria felt the weight of what he was saying. "Nathan, I'm not going anywhere." "You can't promise that." "No, but I can promise I'm not taking this lightly, that I care about Sophie, that I care about you, that I want to build something real, even if it's scary and messy and complicated." Another pause. "Okay, Saturday at 6? I'll be there." Victoria hung up and stared at her phone, heart racing. She was having dinner at Nathan's apartment, meeting them on their territory, in their space, as part of their lives instead of a visitor passing through. It felt monumental. Saturday evening, Victoria stood outside Nathan's building clutching a bottle of wine and a bag of fresh bread from the bakery Laura had recommended. She'd changed clothes 3 times before settling on jeans and a casual sweater. Nothing too formal, nothing too fancy. Just Victoria. She climbed the stairs to the second floor and knocked on apartment 2C. Immediately, she heard Sophie's voice. "She's here! She's here! Daddy, the paint lady is here!" The door swung open, and Sophie stood there in pajama pants and a t-shirt that said Future CEO in glittery letters. "Nice shirt," Victoria said. "Daddy got it for me after you said I could be a CEO if I wanted." Sophie grabbed her hand and pulled her inside. "Come see my room. I cleaned it and everything." The apartment was small but warm. Mismatched furniture that looked comfortable rather than expensive. Photos on every surface. Sophie at various ages. Sophie with Nathan, a beautiful woman with dark hair who must have been Emily. The walls were covered with Sophie's artwork, hung carefully like a gallery. It smelled like tomato sauce and garlic bread and home. Sophie dragged Victoria down a short hallway to a tiny bedroom absolutely covered in dragon drawings. See? I hung up all the ones I made with the art set you got me. Victoria looked at the walls, dozens of purple dragons in various poses, breathing fire and ice, flying through skies, guarding castles. These are incredible. That one's my favorite. Sophie pointed to a dragon that was somehow both fierce and friendly. I named her Victoria. The words hit like a physical blow. You named her after me? Yeah, because she's strong and brave and she helps people. Like you. Victoria blinked back tears. I don't know what to say. You could say thank you. That's what Daddy tells me to say when someone gives me a compliment. Thank you, Victoria managed. That's the best compliment I've ever received. Nathan appeared in the doorway. Sophie, let Victoria breathe. Dinner's ready. They ate at a small kitchen table, plates balanced on placemats Sophie had decorated with marker drawings. The spaghetti was good, not fancy, and Sophie kept up a constant stream of chatter about school and art class, and how Jamie had gotten in trouble for putting glue in another kid's hair. Victoria relaxed into it, this normal family dinner that felt extraordinary precisely because it was so ordinary. After dinner, Sophie asked if they could watch a movie. Nathan put on some animated thing about dragons, Sophie's choice, obviously, and the three of them ended up on the couch, Sophie between them, getting drowsy as the movie played. Halfway through, Sophie leaned against Victoria's shoulder. Paint lady? Yeah, sweetheart? Are you Daddy's girlfriend? Victoria's heart stopped. She looked over Sophie's head at Nathan, who looked equally panicked. Sophie, Nathan started. Because Emma says when grown-ups have dinner together a lot, one of them is usually a girlfriend or a boyfriend. And you have dinner with us a lot now. Victoria didn't know what to say. She and Nathan hadn't defined what they were doing. They'd been carefully navigating around the question, taking things slow. But Sophie deserved honesty. Would that be okay with you? Victoria asked carefully. If I was? Sophie considered this seriously. Would you still be the paint lady? Of course. And would you still come to my concerts and stuff? Absolutely. And would you be nice to Daddy? Because some people are mean and Daddy deserves nice people. Victoria felt her throat tighten. I promise to always be nice to your daddy. Sophie nodded, satisfied. Then I think it would be okay. She snuggled deeper into the couch, eyes drifting closed. Within minutes she was asleep, breathing soft and steady against Victoria's shoulder. Nathan looked at Victoria across his daughter's sleeping form, and his expression was complicated, vulnerable and hopeful and scared all at once. So, he said quietly, I guess we should talk about this girlfriend thing. I guess we should. For the record, I'm terrified. Me too. But I also really want this. Want you. Want to see where this goes. Nathan reached across Sophie's sleeping form and took Victoria's hand. If you're willing to be patient with me while I figure out how to do this again. Victoria squeezed his hand. I've never done this before. Any of it. So we'll figure it out together. Together, Nathan repeated, and smiled. I like the sound of that. They sat like that for a long time, holding hands across the sleeping child who'd somehow brought them together, and Victoria felt something settle into place inside her. This was home. Not her expensive penthouse with its lake views and designer furniture. This cramped apartment with mismatched dishes and dragon drawings on every wall. This was where she belonged. The first real test came 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning that started like any other. Victoria was reviewing budget projections when James knocked on her door, looking more nervous than usual. Miss Sinclair, you have a visitor, Margaret Chen. She says it's urgent. Victoria's stomach tightened, but she kept her expression neutral. Send her in. Margaret entered with the kind of smile that meant trouble. She sat down without being invited, crossing her legs and smoothing her skirt like she had all the time in the world. Victoria, I'll get straight to the point. The board is calling for a vote. A vote on what? On your position as CEO. Margaret's smile never wavered. There's been concern about your recent behavior. The missed meetings, the reduced hours, the personal relationships affecting your judgment. Several board members feel it's time for new leadership. Victoria felt ice flood her veins. Based on what metrics? Our quarterly numbers are the strongest in 3 years. Client retention is up. Employee satisfaction is up. Every measurable indicator shows this company is thriving. Numbers aren't everything. Leadership requires focus, dedication, sacrifice. Margaret leaned forward. You've changed, Victoria. Everyone can see it. You used to be first in, last out. Now you're leaving at 5, taking Tuesdays off, dating an employee. I volunteer on Tuesday afternoons, and my personal life is none of the board's business. It is when it affects your performance. My performance has improved. Victoria pulled up her laptop, fingers moving fast across the keyboard. Since I started maintaining better work-life balance, I've closed 3 major deals, restructured 2 underperforming divisions, and increased our profit margin by 8%. Want to compare that to my numbers from last year when I was working 80-hour weeks? Margaret's smile tightened. The vote is scheduled for next Monday. I thought you deserved advance warning. She stood. For what it's worth, I always knew you'd burn out eventually. You were too young, too inexperienced. It was only a matter of time. After she left, Victoria sat in her office, hands shaking slightly. They were trying to force her out. After everything she'd built, after years of sacrificing her personal life for this company, they were going to push her out the moment she tried to have both. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. Art class today. Don't forget, Emma and me made you something. Victoria stared at the message, torn between fury and fear. She had a board meeting to prepare for, strategies to plan, alliances to build. This was a fight for her career, her reputation, everything she'd worked for, but she'd also promised Sophie she'd be there. She looked at the clock. 2:15. Art class started at 3. Victoria closed her laptop and stood up. James, she said, walking past his desk. Clear my afternoon. I'll be at Fairfield Elementary. But, Ms. Sinclair, the Hanover call, reschedule it, and the budget review can wait until tomorrow. Victoria grabbed her coat. If anyone asks where I am, tell them I'm exactly where I need to be. At Fairfield Elementary, Sophie and Emma ambushed her the moment she walked into the art room, dragging her over to a table covered in paper mache. We made you a dragon, Sophie announced proudly. A real one. Well, not real, but realistic. The dragon was lumpy and lopsided, with wings that didn't match and a tail that seemed to be falling off. It was absolutely perfect. This is amazing, Victoria said, meaning it. Emma did the wings and I did the head and we both did the body. Sophie pointed to various sections. And we painted it purple because that's your favorite color now. It is? Yeah. Because of the dragon I drew, the one I named after you. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. She'd spent the morning being told she was failing, that she wasn't enough, that she had to choose between success and happiness. And here was a 7-year-old who thought purple was her favorite color because of a dragon named Victoria. Thank you, she managed. This is the best gift anyone's ever given me. Sophie beamed. Emma looked pleased. Mrs. Palmer walked over, smiling. The girls worked very hard on that. They've been planning it for 2 weeks. It shows, Victoria said, carefully touching the dragon's crooked wing. She spent the next hour helping kids with their projects, getting paint on her sleeves, listening to second-grade drama about who was friends with whom and who got picked first for kickball. By the time parents started arriving for pickup, Victoria had almost forgotten about Margaret's threat. Almost. Nathan appeared in the doorway at 5:15, and his expression shifted the moment he saw Victoria's face. What happened? He asked quietly while Sophie gathered her things. Board meeting on Monday. They're voting on whether to remove me as CEO. Nathan's jaw tightened. Can they do that? If they have enough votes, yes. Victoria tried to keep her voice level. Margaret Chen came to my office this morning to tell me. Said I've lost focus, that my personal life is affecting my judgment. That's ridiculous. Your numbers prove... Numbers don't matter when people have already decided you're failing. Victoria watched Sophie stuff papers into her backpack, oblivious to the adult conversation. They're using you against me. Us. The fact that I'm dating an employee, that I leave work early, that I'm not sacrificing every waking moment for the company. So what are you going to do? Victoria met his eyes. I don't know yet, but I'm not running away. I'm not going to let them make me choose between having a career and having a life. Even if it costs you everything you've built. Even then, Victoria said it firmly, surprising herself with how much she meant it. Because what I've built with you and Sophie matters more than a title. Nathan looked like he wanted to say something, but Sophie bounded over, backpack bouncing. Ready, Daddy? Can the paint lady come for dinner? Sophie, Victoria probably has work. I'd love to, Victoria interrupted. If that's okay. Nathan studied her face. You sure? Very sure. They went to a diner this time, one of those classic Chicago places with red vinyl booths and a menu that hadn't changed in 40 years. Sophie ordered pancakes for dinner. Apparently that was allowed on special occasions. And Victoria found herself laughing at a story about a kid in Sophie's class who tried to bring a pet lizard to school in his lunchbox. For 2 hours, she forgot about board meetings and votes and career-ending decisions. She was just Victoria, eating terrible diner coffee and listening to a 7-year-old explain why lizards made better pets than hamsters. But that night, lying in bed in her penthouse, reality came crashing back. She had 5 days to prepare for a vote that could end her career. 5 days to figure out how to defend herself against accusations that were technically accurate. She had changed, she was working fewer hours, she was involved with an employee. The question was whether she was willing to pretend otherwise. Victoria spent the next 3 days in a strange limbo. She went to work, handled her responsibilities, prepared for the Monday meeting. But she also left at 5 every day. She didn't cancel dinner with Nathan on Wednesday. She showed up for art class on Thursday afternoon. She was done pretending that success required misery. On Friday evening, her father called. Victoria, we need to talk about Monday's vote. I know about the vote, Dad. Then you know it's serious. Margaret has been building support for weeks. If you don't handle this correctly, you could lose everything. Victoria sat on her couch, looking out at the Chicago skyline. What would you do if you were me? Theodore was quiet for a moment. A year ago, I would have told you to cut all personal ties, work around the clock this weekend, show the board you're still the ruthless CEO they hired. Make them believe the old Victoria is back. And now? Now I'm watching my daughter finally seem happy for the first time since her mother died. And I'm wondering if maybe I gave you the wrong advice all these years. His voice softened. Your mother always said I worked too much, that I was so focused on building an empire that I missed watching you grow up. She was right. Victoria felt tears sting her eyes. I don't know how to win this, Dad. If I prove I'm still ruthless and focused, I lose Nathan and Sophie. If I stand by my choices, I lose my career. Maybe you're asking the wrong question. What do you mean? You're trying to figure out how to win the vote, but maybe you should be asking whether the vote even matters. Theodore paused. What do you actually want, Victoria? Not what you're supposed to want, not what looks good on paper. What would make you happy? Victoria looked around her penthouse. Expensive, impressive, empty. Then she thought about Nathan's cramped apartment with dragon drawings on the walls and mismatched furniture, and Sophie's laughter echoing through the rooms. I want both, she admitted. I want to be good at my job and have a life outside of it. I want to prove that you can be successful without sacrificing everything personal. I want to build something that matters in the boardroom and something that matters at home. Then do that. Stop trying to convince them you haven't changed. Own it. Show them that change made you better. After they hung up, Victoria sat in the darkness for a long time, her father's words echoing in her head. Own it. On Sunday afternoon, Victoria called Nathan. Can we talk? All three of us? An hour later, she sat in Nathan's living room, Sophie coloring at the coffee table while the adults drank tea at the kitchen table. I have the board meeting tomorrow, Victoria said. They're voting on whether to remove me as CEO, and I need to tell you both something important. Sophie looked up from her coloring. Are you in trouble? Maybe. Some people at my work think I'm not doing a good job anymore. But you are doing a good job. You helped Daddy save all that money. I know, sweetie. But some people think I should be working all the time, not leaving early for art class or having dinner with you guys. Sophie's face scrunched up in confusion. That's silly. Everybody needs dinner and art class. I agree, but not everyone sees it that way. Victoria looked at Nathan. Tomorrow I'm going to stand in front of the board and tell them I've changed, that I'm not the person I was a year ago, that I have a life outside of work now, and that makes me better at my job, not worse. And if they don't agree, Nathan asked quietly, then I lose my position, maybe get reassigned to something less visible, maybe get pushed out entirely. Victoria took a breath. But I'm not going to lie and say you don't matter, that this doesn't matter, because it does. Nathan reached across the table and took her hand. Victoria, You don't have to risk your career for us. I'm not risking it for you. I'm risking it for me, for the person I want to be. She squeezed his hand. I spent years building a career that made me miserable. I'm not going back to that, no matter what the board decides. Sophie had stopped coloring and was watching them intently. Paint lady? If they fire you, does that mean you can come to art class more? Victoria laughed despite the tension. Maybe, yeah. Then maybe it would be okay. Because we could do art every day instead of just Tuesdays. Nathan's eyes were bright. Sophie, I'm just saying, the paint lady is really good at art, and she's sad when she talks about work sometimes. But she's not sad when she's doing art with us. Out of the mouths of 7-year-olds. Victoria looked at this little girl who saw the world so simply, so clearly. Work made the paint lady sad. Art made her happy. Therefore, more art was the obvious solution. You're very wise, Sophie Bug, Victoria said. I know. Daddy tells me that all the time. That night, Victoria went home and wrote her presentation for Monday's meeting. Not the defensive, apologetic version she'd been mentally drafting all week. Something different, something honest, something that might cost her everything or change everything. Monday morning arrived gray and cold. Victoria dressed carefully, her best suit, her power heels, her CEO armor. But she left her hair down instead of pulled back. A small rebellion, but meaningful. The board meeting was scheduled for 10. Victoria arrived at 9:30 to find the conference room already filling up. Margaret Chen sat at one end, looking confident. Richard Holloway was there, along with several other executives who'd been quietly undermining Victoria for months. But Theodore Sinclair sat at the other end, and when he caught Victoria's eye, he nodded slightly. At exactly 10, Margaret called the meeting to order. Thank you all for being here. As you know, we're here to discuss Victoria Sinclair's performance as CEO and whether she should continue in that role. Margaret's voice was professionally neutral, but her eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Victoria, would you like to address the board before we hear from other members? Victoria stood, gathering her notes. Her hands were steady. Yes, thank you. She looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes. I've been CEO of this company for 2 years. In that time, we've increased revenue by 47%, improved client retention by 32%, and restructured 3 failing divisions that are now profitable. By every measurable metric, this company is more successful than when I took over. No one is disputing your past performance, Richard interjected. The concern is about your current commitment level. You're right. My commitment level has changed. Victoria set down her notes. 6 months ago, I was working 80-hour weeks. I was first in, last out, available 24/7. I had no personal life, no hobbies, no relationships outside of work. And you know what? I was miserable, burned out, making decisions from a place of exhaustion rather than clarity. Margaret leaned forward. So you're admitting you're no longer fully committed? I'm admitting I was doing it wrong. Victoria's voice was firm. I thought success meant sacrificing everything else. That good leadership required being available every moment, saying yes to every meeting, putting work above everything. But that's not leadership. That's martyrdom. And it was making me worse at my job, not better. She pulled up a presentation on the screen. These are our numbers from the past 6 months, since I started maintaining better boundaries. Revenue is up 8% from the previous 6 months. Employee satisfaction scores have improved by 15%. We've closed 3 major deals that had been stalling for months. Want to know why? No one answered. Because I'm making better decisions. Because I'm not exhausted all the time. Because I have perspective outside these walls that helps me see problems differently. Victoria advanced the slide. I started volunteering at an elementary school. And you know what I learned? That creativity matters. That people work better when they're supported, not intimidated. That the best results come from giving people room to breathe, not demanding they sacrifice everything. This is very touching, Margaret said coolly, but it doesn't address the fact that you're in a personal relationship with a subordinate employee. You're right. I am. Victoria didn't flinch. Nathan Reed is one of the most talented analysts this company has. He's saved us millions of dollars through his strategic thinking. And yes, I'm dating him. But that relationship hasn't compromised my judgment. It's enhanced it. Because he's challenged me to be better, to think differently, to stop confusing productivity with presence. That's a conflict of interest, Richard said. Is it? Have I given Nathan any special treatment, any promotions he didn't earn, any advantages other employees don't have? Victoria looked directly at Richard. Or are you uncomfortable because I'm finally calling out the difference between actual performance and performative dedication? Theodore cleared his throat. I'd like to speak, if I may. Margaret looked annoyed but nodded. I've known Victoria her entire life, Theodore said, and I've watched her build this career through sheer force of will and brilliance. But I've also watched her become increasingly isolated and unhappy. Until recently. He looked at his daughter. The Victoria I've seen in the past 6 months is more engaged, more creative, more effective than she's ever been, because she's finally living like a human being instead of a machine. With all due respect, Margaret said, human beings don't build successful companies. Dedication and sacrifice do. No, Victoria said quietly. Dedication and sacrifice build resentment and burnout. Passion and balance build sustainable success. She advanced to her final slide. Here's what I'm proposing. Give me 6 more months. Judge me on results, not hours logged. If our numbers decline, if performance suffers, if there's any evidence that my personal life is hurting this company, I'll resign. But if the numbers continue to improve, you acknowledge that maybe the old model of leadership is broken. The room was silent. And if we vote to remove you today? Margaret asked. Victoria felt her heart pound, but her voice stayed steady. Then you remove me. And I'll know I stood up for what I believe in, that I refuse to pretend that success requires misery, that I chose to be whole person instead of just a title. She sat down. Margaret called for discussion. Arguments flew back and forth, some board members defending Victoria's numbers, others insisting that her behavior set a dangerous precedent. Richard claimed she was destroying company culture. Theodore argued she was modernizing it. Finally, Margaret called for the vote. All in favor of removing Victoria Sinclair as CEO? 5 hands went up. Victoria's stomach dropped. All opposed? 6 hands, including Theodore's. Victoria exhaled slowly. 6 to 5. She'd survived by a single vote. Margaret's expression was ice. The motion fails. Victoria Sinclair remains CEO. She stood abruptly. This meeting is adjourned. As people filed out, Theodore approached Victoria. That was either very brave or very stupid, he said. You said the same thing about my last board confrontation. The statement stands. He smiled slightly. Your mother would have been proud. She always said the best leaders are the ones who know when to stop leading and start living. After everyone left, Victoria sat alone in the conference room, hands shaking with delayed adrenaline. She'd won. By 1 vote, but she'd won. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. How did it go? Victoria typed back, I'm still CEO. That's amazing. Sophie's going to be so excited. Can I see you both tonight? We'll be here. That evening, Victoria knocked on Nathan's door at 6:30, clutching a bottle of sparkling cider and feeling lighter than she had in days. Sophie opened the door and immediately threw her arms around Victoria's waist. Daddy said you won. You're still the boss. I am still the boss. I knew you would be. You're too good at bossing to not be the boss. Sophie pulled her inside. We made spaghetti to celebrate with the good garlic bread. Nathan appeared from the kitchen, smiling. Congratulations. Thank you. Victoria set down the cider and suddenly found herself moving toward him, wrapping her arms around his neck. Thank you for not asking me to choose. Nathan held her close. I would never ask you to choose. I want you to have everything you want. I want this, Victoria said against his shoulder. I want art class and pizza dinners and dragon drawings on the wall. I want Sophie's concerts and your terrible coffee and Sunday snowball fights. You're stuck with all of it now. They stood like that for a long moment until Sophie tugged on Victoria's sleeve. Can we eat? I'm starving and the garlic bread is getting cold. Dinner was chaotic and perfect. Sophie talked nonstop about something that happened at recess. Nathan burned the garlic bread slightly, but claimed it added character, and Victoria laughed so hard she nearly snorted sparkling cider. After Sophie went to bed, Victoria and Nathan sat on the couch with glasses of wine, talking quietly. What happens now? Nathan asked. Now I prove them right. I keep the numbers strong, keep pushing the company forward, and show them that balance makes better leaders. Victoria leaned against his shoulder. And I keep showing up for art class and concerts and Sunday dinners. Sophie's going to want you around all the time now. Good. I want to be around all the time. Nathan turned to look at her. Victoria, I need to tell you something. Okay, I'm falling in love with you. He said it simply, no drama, just truth. Maybe I already have, and that terrifies me because I didn't think I'd ever feel this way about anyone again after Emily. But here we are. Victoria's heart felt too big for her chest. I'm falling in love with you too, with both of you, and it terrifies me too because I've never let myself need anyone before. So we're both terrified. Completely. Nathan smiled. Sounds about right. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and Victoria thought about how far she'd come from that night at the gala when she'd stood alone by the windows, watching Nathan walk away to his daughter. She'd been so lost then, so convinced that success meant isolation. Now she was sitting in a cramped apartment with mismatched furniture and dragon drawings everywhere. And she'd never felt more successful in her life. The next few months were a careful balance. Victoria threw herself into work with renewed energy, but she also held her boundaries firm. She left at 5:30 most days. She never missed art class on Tuesdays. She had dinner with Nathan and Sophie at least 3 times a week. And the company thrived. By March, they'd closed 2 major international deals that had been pending for over a year. Employee turnover dropped to its lowest rate in a decade. Client satisfaction scores hit all-time highs. Richard Holloway left for a position at a competitor, and Victoria didn't try to stop him. Margaret Chen remained on the board but stopped actively undermining her. Not because she'd won Margaret over, but because the numbers spoke louder than personal vendettas. Victoria also made good on her decision to find a new apartment. She moved out of the penthouse into a 2-bedroom place in Nathan's neighborhood. It was smaller, less impressive, but it had a park across the street and a coffee shop on the corner, and Sophie could ride her bike to visit. On a Friday evening in early April, Victoria was leaving the office when she ran into Marcus Thompson in the elevator. Ms. Sinclair, can I ask you something? Of course. How did you do it? Balance everything? Because I've been trying to leave by 6 so I can see my kids more, and I keep getting pulled back in. Emergency meetings, urgent emails, crisis management. Victoria thought about this. You have to decide what you're willing to fight for, and then you have to actually fight for it. Not just say it matters, but prove it with your choices. Even if it costs you politically, especially then. Victoria met his eyes. I almost lost my job because I refused to pretend that working 80-hour weeks was sustainable or desirable. But I'm still here, and I'm doing better work than I ever did when I was running myself into the ground. Marcus nodded slowly. My daughter has a dance recital next Tuesday. I've missed the last 3 years because of work commitments. Don't miss this one. But the client presentation can happen Wednesday, or someone else can handle it. You're a manager, Marcus, delegate. Victoria smiled. Your daughter is only going to be this age once. The presentation will still exist next week. Choose accordingly. The elevator doors opened on the ground floor. Marcus stepped out, then turned back. Thank you, Miss Sinclair. Call me Victoria and go to the recital. Walking to her car, Victoria realized something had shifted. She wasn't just changing her own life anymore. She was changing the culture, showing people that success and humanity weren't mutually exclusive. That felt more important than any quarterly report. Sophie's spring concert arrived on a warm May evening. Victoria sat in the same gymnasium with the same folding chairs, but this time she wasn't nervous. She belonged here now. Nathan sat beside her, their hands clasped together. On stage, Sophie stood in the front row wearing a flower crown made of paper and looking intensely focused. The concert was just as off-key as the winter one, but Victoria loved every minute. During Somewhere Over the Rainbow, Sophie caught her eye and waved enthusiastically, nearly hitting the kid next to her. After the concert, they went for ice cream instead of hot chocolate. It was warm enough now. Sophie got mint chocolate chip and talked non-stop about how she'd remembered all the words this time, even the hard ones in the song about flowers. Paint lady, Sophie said suddenly, ice cream smeared on her chin. Emma wants to know if you're my stepmom. Victoria's spoon froze halfway to her mouth. Nathan looked equally panicked. Why is Emma asking about that? Nathan asked carefully. Because her dad has a girlfriend and she calls her bonus mom. So Emma wanted to know if the paint lady is my bonus mom. Victoria and Nathan exchanged glances. They'd been dating for 4 months, officially together for 3. It was still relatively new, still fragile in some ways. But Sophie was looking at her with those intense eyes, waiting for an answer. I don't know, Victoria said honestly. What do you think? Would you want me to be? Sophie considered this seriously. Would you come to all my concerts? Every single one. And help with homework? If you want me to. And be nice to Daddy even when he's being weird? Nathan made an indignant sound. I'm not weird. You organize the fridge by color, Daddy. That's weird. That's efficient. Sophie ignored him, still focused on Victoria. And would you love us? Like for real? Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. I already do, sweetheart. I love you both so much. Then I think you should be my bonus mom. Sophie returned to her ice cream like this was settled business. Emma's going to be so excited. Now we both have bonus moms. Nathan reached under the table and squeezed Victoria's hand. When she looked at him, his eyes were bright. Bonus mom, he said quietly. I like that. Me too. Walking back to the car, Sophie skipped ahead, singing one of the concert songs badly. Victoria and Nathan followed at a slower pace, hands still linked. Is this really happening? Victoria asked. Am I really here with you, being someone's bonus mom? Looks like it. 6 months ago, I was alone in a penthouse, convinced success meant isolation. And now? Victoria looked at Nathan, at Sophie skipping through the parking lot, at the perfectly ordinary spring evening that somehow felt extraordinary. Now I know better. Success isn't about how much you achieve or how high you climb. It's about who's waiting for you at the end of the day. It's about building something that matters beyond quarterly reports and shareholder value. Nathan stopped walking and turned to face her. Victoria Sinclair, you are the most terrifying and wonderful thing that's ever happened to us. Just terrifying and wonderful? Not brilliant and powerful? Those too, but mostly terrifying and wonderful. He leaned in and kissed her, gentle and sure. And I'm so glad you walked into our lives. I'm glad I did too. Sophie came running back. Are you guys being mushy? Emma says grown-ups get mushy when they're in love. Emma's very wise, Victoria said. I know. That's why she's my best friend. Sophie grabbed both their hands. Can we go home now? I want to show the paint lady my new dragon drawing. Lead the way, Sophie Bug. They walked through the parking lot together. This makeshift family that somehow worked despite all the reasons it shouldn't. A CEO who'd learned that power meant nothing without people to share it with. A widower who'd learned that moving forward didn't mean forgetting the past. A 7-year-old who'd decided the paint lady should be her bonus mom. Victoria thought about the woman she'd been at that gala 6 months ago. Lonely, exhausted, convinced that success required sacrificing everything personal. She'd been so lost, measuring her worth by her net worth, afraid to need anyone. Now she knew better. Real success wasn't about conquering boardrooms or crushing competitors. It was about finding people who saw past the armor to the person underneath. It was about building a life that felt good, not just impressive. It was about coming home to dragon drawings on the walls and a little girl's laughter and a man who challenged her to be better by being himself. That evening, in Nathan's apartment that had become a second home, Victoria sat on the floor with Sophie and painted purple dragons while Nathan made dinner in the kitchen. Music played from an old radio. The windows were open to the spring breeze. Everything was ordinary and imperfect and absolutely right. Sophie leaned against Victoria's shoulder, paintbrush in hand. Paint lady? Yes, sweetheart? I'm glad you came to my concert that first time. I'm glad you stayed. Victoria wrapped her arm around Sophie's small shoulders. Me too, Bug. Me too. Later, after Sophie went to bed, Victoria and Nathan sat on the tiny balcony, looking out at their modest neighborhood. No lake views, no glittering skyline, just regular Chicago streets with regular people living regular lives. No regrets? Nathan asked. Victoria thought about everything she'd risked. Her career, her reputation, the carefully constructed image she'd spent years building. She thought about the board vote she'd won by a single margin, the enemies she'd made, the bridges she'd burned. Then she thought about Sophie's dragon drawings and Tuesday art classes and Sunday morning pancakes. She thought about falling asleep next to Nathan and waking up to his daughter's laughter. She thought about finally understanding what it meant to be whole. Not a single one, she said. And she meant it. Because Victoria Sinclair had finally learned what really mattered. It wasn't the corner office, or the executive title, or the recognition from people who'd never really cared about her anyway. It was this. Sitting on a balcony with someone she loved, building a life that felt real instead of impressive, choosing happiness over achievement for the first time in her life. She'd spent years climbing to the top of the mountain, only to discover that everything she actually needed was waiting for her at the bottom. The lonely billionaire CEO had finally come home. And it turned out home wasn't a place at all. It was the people who made you want to stop running long enough to actually live.